Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if half-demon Naruto built the ultimate harem with Sakura, Ino, Hinata, Anko, Ayame, and Tsume episode 13. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, the final battle is drawing closer. Naruto's half-demon powers have reached unimaginable heights, and the entire Shinobi world is preparing for a conflict that could decide its future forever. Now, let's start. With a tired yawn, Naruto leaned back against one of the training posts of his team's designated training grounds as he waited for the rest of his team to arrive. The only reason Sakura had not accompanied him to the training ground was because she had reluctantly stayed at her mother's house. Naruto had ventured to ask why she just didn't tell her mother the truth, but the Pinkett had countered that it would only cause more headaches for them. Naruto had accepted his mate's reasoning, knowing full well with her mother on the civilian council, and one of the few still firmly rooted in the Uchiha camp, she could no doubt make their daily lives within the village far more annoying than it needed to be. His thoughts then turned to the other member that made up Team 7. The brooding Uchiha, who was no doubt still in the shower trying to wash out the stench of the canines he had been forced to clean during his and Sakura's absence. Hana had regaled the two Hanyus with tales of the multiple times her mother had planted the arrogant Uchiha face first into a pile of dog shit. Much to the amusement of both Sakura and Naruto. Releasing another bored yawn, Naruto thought back over the events of the past few weeks, which for lack of a better word, had been extremely eventful, constantly keeping the blonde Hanyu busy. Ever since he had returned to the village from his mission in Yuki no Kuni, now named Haru no Kuni, Naruto had been busy non-stop. Balancing his time between training for the upcoming exams, and spending time with his girls. With the help of Yugao, he had also even managed to sneak away with Sakura and Hinata a few more times to wipe out more bandit camps, allowing them to fully get control over their Hanyu tendencies. It also helped to allow the girls to fully go all out with their Hanyu abilities. Which was a sight truly to behold, as both Sakura and Hinata had torn through the bandits, slavers, and such with brutal glee. Aside from that, he had also taken both Yakumo and Izumi out on their respective dates as he had promised. However, both dates had encountered their own hiccups due to some unwanted visitors. Despite that, both dates had gone well and each girl enjoyed their time with the blonde Hanyu. The memories still brought a smile to Naruto's face. Flashback no Jutsu, Yakumo's date. Naruto couldn't help but to chuckle silently to himself as he observed how nervous the budding genjutsu mistress was acting as they left the Uzumaki compound. Though he could understand the reason why she felt so anxious. Not only was she going out on her first date, but it was also the first time she had left the compound since Naruto had brought her into his home after the root incident, so it would only be natural for her to feel a bit nervous. Smiling, he grasped her hand and gave it a firm squeeze, catching her attention. "Are you ready, Yakumo-chan?" he inquired with a smile, earning one in return from the budding genjutsu mistress. "Where are we going, Naruto-kun?" she asked, as the blonde had yet to reveal what he had planned for their date. "That is a secret," he grinned, "but I promise you will like it." Casually, the two strolled through the village hand in hand, earning a few curious looks at the Kurama heiress being out and about alongside Naruto. Fortunately for the blonde Hanyu and his date, many of the village's populace had changed their view of the blonde, much thanks to his accomplishments within the village as well as his feats outside of Konoha as well. Though there were a few quiet whispers among the onlookers, mostly pertaining to the young genjutsu mistress, as rumors had spread that she was dead. "They're staring at us, Naruto-kun," Yakumo whispered, a little embarrassed by the attention they had attracted. "Let them." The blonde smiled, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're beautiful after all." Blushing, the brunette proceeded to rest her head on her date's shoulder. A few more minutes found the duo in the middle of a festive-looking market filled with various art supplies, portraits, and other miscellaneous items for aspiring artists. Seeing this, Yakumo's eyes widen in shock as Naruto leads her through the marketplace, allowing her to look over various paintings and other art pieces that were on display. She struggled to find the words to describe her joy. I told you that you would enjoy where I was going to take you. The blonde smiled as Yakumo began to drag him to the various stalls and vendors in excitement. As the hours ticked by, the young couple had decided to sit side by side for an evening meal at one of the various food vendors that littered the marketplace that offered a wide assortment of food and refreshments. This had also given Naruto the chance to safely seal all of the gifts he had bought his date into storage scrolls that he had brought along, as he had fully intended to spoil the young genjutsu mistress. Which he did, having bought her a brand new easel, along with buying out one vendor's entire stock of canvas. Not to mention an entire collection of new brushes of various sizes, as well as paint of various colors. But the item she cherished most was a portrait that had done with just the two of them as they embraced one another in loving comfort. Even if it was a little embarrassing as to how the artist had captured the moment. While the two were having an intimate moment together, sharing a kiss, the artist had snapped their picture and had all but begged to do the portrait. While Yakumo blushed in embarrassment of the situation, Naruto had agreed and the artist had set to work immediately on the portrait, using the photo as reference. Once it was finished, Yakumo was breathless due to how beautiful it was. Naruto-kun, you really didn't have to do all this for me. Yakumo stated with a slight blush as she gestured to the small pile of sealing scrolls that contained everything the blonde had bought her. Yakumo-chan, you are a very special woman. Naruto smiled at her. You deserve all of this. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She replied, taking a bite of the dango she had ordered. A slight blush on her cheeks from the compliment she had just received. You're very welcome. The blonde smiled back, before digging into the curry before him. Having opted to have something other than ramen during their date. As the two ate in comfortable silence, a shadow grew before them. Looking up, Yakumo's eyes widened in fear at the man that now stood before them. A deep scowl etched across his aging face as he glared at the young genjutsu mistress, causing her to shrink back slightly until she felt a comforting squeeze from the blonde next to her. Something I can help you with, Unkai-san? Naruto inquired in an even tone, catching the aging man's attention. Yes, Unkai stated. As acting head of the Kurama clan, I demand that you surrender Yakumo Kurama to be executed immediately for the murder of my brother and his wife. Slowly, Naruto stood up from his seat and leveled his own glare towards the acting head of the Kurama clan, causing the elder man to flinch under the blonde heinous cold gaze. All the while, guiding Yakumo up from her seat and behind him. Well, acting clan head. Naruto smirked. As the official clan head of the Uzumaki clan, I am going to have to not so politely tell you to off with your demands, as Yakumo-chan is under the Uzumaki clan protection. Do you have any? Furthermore, I am well aware of your numerous requests for Yakumo-chan's execution. I am also well aware that each request was denied by the Hokage. So no, I will not be handing over Yakumo-chan just so you can murder her. Also you can be filled with a false sense of justice to inflate your fragile ego. At this, Unkai felt enraged that the young blonde would embarrass him so, and make such accusations that all he wanted to do was murder his niece in cold blood. Boy, you have no idea, the elder man began. Yes I do. Naruto interrupted. Now, this will be your only warning. Walk away. A moment of tense silence passed between the two clan heads. This isn't over. Unkai was unable to finish as he suddenly felt three sharp edges lightly pressed against various parts of his body. Turning his head slightly, he could make out three clones of the boy in front of him, all holding a black blade ready to impale him at the slightest movement against the two lovers. Know this Unkai Kurama. Naruto started coldly. You make any move against Yakumo-chan, any move at all, I will see it as an act of war against the Uzumaki clan and I will single-handedly wipe out your entire clan. Are you threatening me, boy? Unkai asked defiantly, though fear was evident in his voice. No, I'm making a promise. The blonde Hanyu stated, leaking a small amount of killer intent directed solely at the man before him. Now leave. A heavy silence hung between the two clan heads as Naruto's promise hung in the air between them. Despite himself, Unkai couldn't help but to slightly shudder in fear before the blonde's eyes. Every instinct screamed at the elder Kurama that this was not an idle promise, that the blonde would massacre his entire clan. This was further reinforced by small flashes of visions of his various clan members massacring bodies, causing the elder man to break out in a cold sweat. Wisely, Unkai opted to retreat, leaving the two lovers alone. Once he was out of sight, Naruto turned to comfort Yakumo, only to be engulfed in a firm hug from the brunette young woman, who was now crying into his chest. Smiling, he wrapped his arms around her, allowing his hands to run up and down her back in a comforting manner. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She spoke softly, her face still buried into his chest. For defending me, Yakumo-chan. Naruto smiled. You are one of my homes. I will always defend you. Smiling, she looked up and leaned in, giving him a soft kiss before resting her head on his shoulder. Allowing her face to snuggle into his neck as she held him. So, is this the part where you tell me about you being a Hanyu and Jashin's champion? She asked softly so that only he could hear her, earning a chuckle from the blonde. You knew about that, huh? He asked playfully. It's kind of hard not to when we live under the same roof. She playfully retorted. Also, Anko-chan is very exciting. That she is. The blonde chuckled. So, how do you feel about it? Naruto-kun, you helped me and brought me into your home, and you asked nothing in return. She began, looking up at him. Not to mention, you and the rest of the girls have given me the love I have missed since my parents died. So if you would allow it, I would love to be one of your mates. Both Izumi-chan and I have both been speaking to Yugao-chan about becoming true Jashinist. She continued with a slight blush, reinforcing her former statement by exposing the base of her neck as an offer to be marked. However, Naruto merely covered her neck and gave her a caring smile, earning a look of confusion from the budding genjutsu mistress. Not here, Yakumo-chan, he told her. Once we get home. Okay, Naruto-kun. She nodded, resting her head once more on his shoulder. Letting out a sigh of contentment. Flashback no jutsu dispel. True to his word, once they had returned to the compound that evening, he took the young genjutsu mistress into her room for some privacy and marked her, after giving her his typical lecture about the intimacy behind the mark and so forth. Hilariously, Yakumo had told him to shut up and mark her already before pulling him into a fierce kiss. Something both Anko and Sakura had gotten a kick out of when they had learned of what had transpired between himself and the newly fledged Hanyu, much to the blonde's embarrassment. Regardless, the rest of his mates had warmly welcomed Yakumo into the family. Of course, while reminiscing about his date with the young genjutsu mistress, Naruto couldn't forget about his date with Izumi that had happened the following night after his date with Yakumo. Flashback no jutsu, Izumi's date. Relaxing back into the blonde's embrace as the two of them looked over the village from their vantage point atop the Hokage monument as the sun began to set over the horizon, the young Uchiha woman couldn't even begin to fathom how she got here. Originally, she had been assigned to follow, gain information, and capture or eliminate her target. Instead, during her mission, she had ended up falling for her target. Even before he had welcomed her into his home, she had begun to develop feelings for the blonde Hanyu. Seeing the way he treated his girls and those close to him, not to mention watching how his girls interacted with one another, had filled her with a sense of longing. as if it was a scene that had come to life from one of those romance novels that she had loved reading before her time en route. However, as it normally does, whenever the young Uchiha woman would reminisce about her current romantic life, ghosts from her past would begin to sneak up on her, forcing her to recall her short one-sided romance with one Itachi Uchiha. The mere thought of the kin slayer would cause her blood to boil, infuriated that she had bared her heart to him, and he had figuratively ripped it out when he had attempted to kill her the night he had slain the majority of the Uchiha clan. "You're thinking too loud, Izumi-chan." Naruto's soothing voice broke the Uchiha woman out of her thoughts as he embraced her lithe frame, giving her a sense of comfort and safety. "Something on your mind. Just thinking about the past is all." She frowned, snuggling into his hold. "If you wish to talk about it, I am willing to listen," Naruto stated after a few seconds of silence had passed between them. "However, I will not pry if you are not ready." Silence hung between the two for a handful of seconds before Izumi sighed and leaned forward, out of the blonde's hold. "Like I said, if you don't want to talk about it. No, it would probably be best if I get this off my chest," the Uchiha woman stated, interrupting Naruto. Seeing as the last person she had talked to about it had only used her as a disposable tool, perhaps it would be best to share her pain with someone who was genuinely concerned for her. Turning so that she was face to face with the blonde Hanyu. "As you know, I am one of the survivors of the Uchiha massacre," she began, playing with the grass in front of her. "What most don't know is that the night that it had happened, Itachi had asked me out on a date. At the time, I had a crush on him. Mainly because he was the only one who treated me well and didn't care about who my parents were. He helped me grow as a kunoichi. He was even there for me when both of my parents died. I thought he loved me." Izumi explained with a slight blush, a little embarrassed that she was telling her current love interest about a past love interest. However, Naruto said nothing, allowing her to continue. "I should have known something was wrong. He was the son of the clan head, and I was just a half-breed." She growled at the term that the entire Uchiha clan had labeled her with, since she was only half Uchiha on her mother's side. "Still, I foolishly gave him all my trust. Maybe because I was desperate to actually have another member of the clan acknowledge me. It wasn't until I was bleeding out on my apartment floor did I realize the truth. I was just a means to an end for him to gain more power." Tears leaked out of Izumi's eyes as she choked back the quiet sobs, prompting the blonde Hanyu to reach over and pull her into his warm embrace and allow her to cry into his chest, leaning back as he did so that he was laying down on the grass, pulling the crying Uchiha girl on top of him, rubbing her back and combing his fingers through her hair. "I later came to an underground medical facility," she continued, once she had calmed down. "I only survived because I have a rare medical condition in which my heart is located on the right side of my chest, instead of the left side." "Well, I for one am glad you survived." Naruto spoke softly. "You're a very special woman, Izumi-chan." Izumi couldn't help but smile as she nuzzled into his neck from her position. Thankful for the compliment. "It was then that Danzo came to me. He asked me what happened." She continued her tale. "After I told him, he then offered me a chance to get my revenge on the man that betrayed me and to give me a purpose to protect Konoha from the shadows. I immediately agreed." "You didn't even think it over?" the blonde inquired in a gentle tone. "No," the Uchiha girl sighed. "Then I am willing to bet that he had the seals placed on you just before you woke up," Naruto speculated, "and only gave you the illusion of having a choice." She began before stopping. "No, that makes sense. He would, did something like that, with Yakumo-chan. So what do you want to do now?" he asked. I don't know." Izumi sighed. "Part of me still wants to get revenge on Itachi, but the other part of me wants to just move on with my life. May I offer some advice?" The blonde inquired, earning a nod from the Uchiha girl. Forget about revenge. Revenge is an ugly road that will only lead you to more pain and ruin. To yourself and those around you. Don't get me wrong, he continued before she could say anything. I am not saying you should forgive him for what he did. Just don't let him dictate your life. Live for yourself. From her position on top of him, Izumi leaned up so that she could look him in the eyes. A smile evident upon her face accompanied with a healthy blush as she slowly lowered her lips to meet him. Allowing them to clash with each other in an intimate kiss as the blonde beneath her wrapped his arms around her frame, holding her close. Thank you, Naruto-kun. She stated once the two had separated, laying her head down on his chest one more. For what? For everything. The Uchiha girl smiled. Despite the circumstances of our meeting, you and your girls still brought me into your home, protected me, and gave me a sense of family I never had. You're very welcome, Izumi-chan. He smiled, looking down at the raven-haired girl on top of him as he allowed his fingers to comb through her hair once more. So, is this where you mark me as one of your mates? She asked after a few moments of comfortable silence, prompting the blonde Hanyu to chuckle. You know all of what it entails, correct? He inquired, still combing his fingers through her hair. I do. She replied, leaning up so she could look him in the eyes once again. Bearing the mark will turn me into a Hanyu like yourself and the others that also bear your mark. I am also well aware of the fact that this isn't a light commitment, and that it will span hundreds of years or more. And the fact that I am Jashin-chan's champion doesn't bother me at all, Izumi stated. And as you know, Yakumo-chan and I have both been talking with Yugao-chan about following Jashin-sama. I see. The blonde mused. So your mind is made up then. He got his answer in the form of her smashing her lips against his own in a fierce passionate kiss. Receiving his answer, Naruto broke the kiss and began to trail light kiss down the right side of her neck before stopping at the base of her neck. Giving the area one last gentle kiss before he bit down on her neck, channeling his demonic chakra into her, prompting the Uchiha woman to do the same to him, thus accepting his mark. A few seconds later, he released his mouth from her neck and held her close as her body began to go through the changes of becoming a half-demon, causing her to mildly spasm and shake for a few minutes before her body became relaxed once more. Welcome to the family, Izumi-chan. He smiled as he looked down at her. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Izumi smiled as she leaned up and kissed him once more. This time more tenderly and lovingly, before breaking the kiss and snuggling into him. Feeling a sense of contentment washed over her as she felt his arms embrace her once more. An hour later, their date over, the two newly mated Hanyus casually strolled through the village with Izumi resting her head on her blonde mate's shoulder as they made their way to the Uzumaki compound, his long coat draped over her shoulders, enjoying each other's company. Where the other girls were no doubt waiting to hear all the juicy details, which partially made the young Uchiha woman a bit nervous as Anko could be rather forceful when she wanted to hear all the details, especially if anything intimate were to have happened between the two of them. However, their evening was interrupted when a raven-haired figure stood in front of them. A deep scowl etched across his face as he narrowed his eyes at the Uchiha woman. So, the half-breed survived as well. Sasuke commented, his voice full of venom as he glared at Izumi. You could have redeemed yourself for your filthy blood and submitted yourself to be bred by the elite to restore the clan. Instead, you hoard yourself out to this filth. At this, Izumi's Sharingan eyes flared to life as she glared at the arrogant, last, Uchiha, unknown to her though they had evolved to the next stage, Mangekyo Sharingan 1. This of course caused Sasuke to flinch under the woman's glare. Naruto had moved to defend his mate's honor, only to be stopped by a subtle gesture from the raven-haired woman. If redeeming myself means I would have to submit myself to such an arrogant, short-sighted child. She growled as her Mangekyo Sharingan burned brightly, her Hanyu features slightly showing, making her look all the more intimidating to the last Uchiha. Then I renounce my Uchiha blood and proudly take up the Uzumaki name. Naruto could only smirk as he saw the color drain from Sasuke's face as Izumi defiantly denounced her Uchiha heritage in front of the vaunted last Uchiha and even claimed his as her own. Deciding to avoid the confrontation escalating further, the blonde gently took Izumi's hand and brought her into his embrace. "Let us go, Izumi-chan." He smiled. "Everyone is waiting for us back home." Releasing a soft giggle, the now former Uchiha fell in step with her mate. Leaving behind a stunned Sasuke, who was still processing what had happened. Flashback no jutsu dispel. Of course that had led to more tension between Sasuke and himself when the team would attend meetings and perform more D-rank missions within the village walls, but the blonde didn't care. There was very little Sasuke could do in regards to Izumi. Officially, she was declared dead. A victim of the Uchiha massacre, Danzo would not admit to having her secretly working for him. Morning, Naruto-kun. Sakura greeted as she entered the training ground, snapping the blonde out of his musings. "Morning, Sakura-chan." He smiled as he stood up to officially greet his pink-haired mate. Giving her a soft kiss on the lips. "Sorry to keep you waiting." The pink-haired Hanyu apologized, a look of annoyance washing over her face. "My mother had insisted on some girl talk," which more or less equated to her pressuring me to pursue Sasuke-tem again. Naruto could only growl in response, not liking the thought of Sakura's mother pushing his mates towards another male. Let alone one that had nearly gotten her killed on their first mission outside of the village. After the Chunin exams, Sakura spoke, burying her face into his chest, prompting the blonde to embrace her. "I want to tell her about us. Would you like me to be there when you talk to her?" "I would love that," she replied with a smile. Smiling, the two sat down and rested against the training pole next to each other. No talking, just enjoying each other's company. A few more minutes ticked by before they were graced with the presence of the brooding Uchiha, who shot Naruto a dirty look upon entering the training ground, prompting the two hangouts to chuckle, knowing full well what it was about. "Yo," Kakashi stated as he appeared in a poof of smoke on top of the training post that Sakura and Naruto were leaning against. "Let me guess, you're late because you were being chased, oiled up guy-sensei." Naruto ventures, causing the masked Jonin to dry heave at the thought of the green beast of Konoha chasing after him, wearing nothing but a radiant smile and covered in body oil. That was not a pleasant image, Naruto. Kakashi gasped, earning a chuckle from the blonde. All in all, the masked Jonin was pleased that he was able to repair his fractured relationship with the other two members of his genin team. Through their reintroductions the weekend the two returned from their last mission, he was able to learn more about them. Sakura's elemental affinities, which he was surprised that even that early on, Naruto had been helping in her training. Feeling a bit ashamed when the two admitted that since they already knew the tree-walking exercise, they had left shadow clones to do it for them, while they trained with their elements down on the beach. He was also able to get a more accurate reading on just how skilled Naruto truly was. While not completely accurate, from what Kakashi had learned from the blonde would put him roughly at high Chunin to mid-Jonin level. Sakura, he had placed at low to mid-Chunin, making both of his estranged students more than ready for the exams. Regrettably, he had to admit that on their own, they had progressed further than even Sasuke had so far. Anyways, Kakashi coughed, getting his team's attention, pulling out 3 slips of paper. "As you know, the Chunin exams are starting today, and I took the liberty of signing you 3 up." All 3 of the genin could only grin in response as they took their slips of paper, which would give them entry into the exams. "You two better not get in my way," Sasuke stated with an arrogant smirk as he departed the training ground, causing both Hanyus to merely shake their head in response. "Come on Sakura-chan, let's do this. Naruto exclaimed. Each team has submitted their permission slips, Hokage-sama. Iruka informed the Hokage with a slight frown. The scarred Chunin wasn't exactly pleased to hear that all of the Junin senseis had endorsed their teams for the exams. Honestly, he felt that only Guy's team was ready for the test, the others were still too green. Having only been genin for less than a year. You don't approve that each of the teams have been endorsed, do you, Iruka? Hiruzen inquired with a knowing look. The elder village leader knew all too well how the academy instructor felt about his former students, namely Naruto. It was clear the scarred man viewed the young blonde as a little brother figure. To be honest, sir, I just don't think most of the teams are ready for the exams. Iruka openly stated. With the exception of Team 9, everyone hasn't even been genin for a full year. Be that as it may. The Hokage began with a slight grin. But, as you may recall, Team 7 themselves have had quite the start for their shinobi careers. Their first C-rank mission turned into an A- rank, yet they were still able to complete it with no fatalities or lasting injuries. But, then there was their most recent mission in Haru no Kuni. Hiruzen interrupted the instructor. Which, according to Princess Koyuki herself, both Naruto-kun and Sakura-chan were key figures for not only the mission's success, but also keeping the rebels alive. But Naruto is quite capable. The elder man interrupted once more. Most, if not all of Team 7's success, has been due to Naruto-kun. He has proven to have a sharp intellect, enough to rival, if not surpass, any Nara clan member. He also has a drive in him to protect those who cannot protect themselves, regardless of the consequences to himself. In Nami no Kuni, at the risk of being charged with insubordination, he ignored Kakashi's orders and remained with the family on a hunch that the family would be targeted. A hunch that proved to be correct. In Haru no Kuni, Naruto-kun had warned Kakashi countless times of an impending ambush. The elder man continued. When Hitaki ignored his warnings, Naruto-kun had taken it upon himself to plan out every detail to protect not only the client, but everyone else. Which was complicated even further when he learned of the rebels attempting a counter-ambush. In the end, Naruto saved everyone. Even taking 4 kunai in the back to protect Koyuki Heim from harm. Iruka could only gawk at the aged village leader. While he had known of the team's numerous successes, he had never read the actual reports as they were generally reserved for the Hokage's eyes only, and thus, he had given credit to Kakashi for the team's success. But to learn that from the team's inception, Naruto was the one responsible for each victory. Still, if you are unconvinced, Hiruzen spoke once more. Feel free to test them yourself. With a silent nod, the scarred Chunin left the office, pondering what course of action he should take. Konoha streets. Both Sakura and Naruto were casually making their way through the village towards the academy, having just dropped off their entry papers to a receptionist in a makeshift office at the edge of the village, instead of the usual records building located next to the Hokage's tower. Making the Pinkett groan in slight irritation. To make matters worse, Kakashi had conveniently failed to mention where they had to turn the papers in at. Seriously, they could have just had everyone turn in their papers at the academy. Sakura grumbled, earning a chuckle from her blonde mate. I am sure they did it this way on purpose. Naruto commented with a thoughtful expression. Probably to throw the participants off their game. Remember what Kakashi did during our genin test. Don't remind me. The Pinkett groaned. Her days fresh out of the academy were not her proudest of moments. What I meant was when Kakashi-sensei initially made us work against each other using hunger, tiredness, and irritation. The blonde pointed out. It stands to reason that Konoha is doing the same thing, to further weed out any genins who are not ready for the exams. Makes sense. Sakura conceded, though still grumbled about having to walk all the way across the village. So, did Anko-chan or Yugao-chan give you any hints on what to expect? Nope, he replied, earning a defeated sigh from the pink-haired kunoichi. All Anko-chan said was that there would be a surprise, though still refused to give any hints as to what it is. Even after I bribed her with a case of dango. Wow, it would be a hell of a surprise if she wouldn't even budge after that. Sakura commented, clearly shocked that her future sister-wife had refused her favorite treat. Ouch! A voice exclaimed from just around the corner ahead of the two Hanyus. That hurt, you little jerk. Rounding the corner, the pair were greeted by the sight of a bulky-looking guy, wearing a bunraku-style puppeteer's costume, with a black hood with what appeared to be cat-like ears on the top. A Suna symbol etched into the boy's hitai that seemed to be stitched onto the cat-eared hood. Makeup covered the large boy's face in some sort of intricate design that appeared to have been drawn on using his sister's lipstick, if the color that adorned the girl's lips next to him was any indication. In the makeup-wearing boy's hand was none other than Konohamaru, the grandson of the old man, his other hand drawn back in a threatening gesture against the kid. Next to the boy in cat pajamas was a sandy blonde-haired girl with an annoyed look on her face. She had teal-colored eyes and her hair tied into 4 different pigtails. 2 on the top, and 2 on the bottom. Her outfit consisted of a single light purple, off-the-shoulders garment that extended halfway down her thighs. A scarlet sash wrapped firmly around her waist. Underneath the light purple garment, the girl wore a full-body fishnet armor that covered her shoulders and her left thigh, while a separate piece of fishnet covered her right calf. Her hitai hanging loosely around her neck, as what appeared to be a massive fan was slung over her back. "Put him down, you big cross-dressing bully." A girl around the same age as both Naruto and Sakura shouted. Taking in her appearance, the two noted that she wore her dark brown hair up into a pair of buns at the top of her head, giving off the appearance of panda ears. This was especially highlighted by her choice of clothing. A pink sleeveless kipao-style blouse with red trimmings and yellow fastening buttons, accompanied with dark green pants. With a kunai holster secured firmly to her outer right thigh and a pair of blue, ankle-high kunoichi sandals, with her hitai proudly displaying the leaf symbol on her forehead. "Kankuro, just put him down." The blonde-haired girl sighed in frustration. "You don't want to piss him off, do you?" "No, this little jerk needs to pay for running into me," the bulky boy stated, bringing his fist back to punch the young boy. "Besides, he isn't here, and what he doesn't know won't hurt him. You know." A low voice speaking from directly behind Kankuro made itself known, causing the poor Suna teen to jump. Drag night is on Tuesday evenings at the Rusty Kunai bar, but for crying out loud, not in front of the children. Face burning red with embarrassment, the Suna teen dropped the young boy, earning a slight eep from him as he landed on his rump, and turned to face the blonde-haired teen. It didn't help matters that 2 of the 3 girls were currently laughing at his expense, while the bun-haired girl had stars in her eyes as she gazed upon the blonde behind him, or rather, what the blonde held. Turning to meet the upstart, he was swiftly met with a slight pressure to his throat. Casting his eyes down, Kankuro could make out what appeared to be a black, blade-like weapon held in a reverse grip position in the blonde's hand, aimed directly at his jugular. "Now, normally I would ask why Suna Shinobi is in Konoha, but I am going to guess you are here to partake in the Chunin exams," Naruto commented as he withdrew his blade, now that Konohamaru was out of danger. Taking a step back away from the black-clad teen. "That is correct, the blonde girl answered, once she had reined in her laughter at her brother's expense. "Naruto," the blonde Hanyu replied. "Naruto Uzumaki, and may I have the name of such a beautiful desert flower." "Te Tamari." The blonde girl blushed at the teen's compliment, while Kankuro fumed at the blonde that was flirting with his sister. "Tamari of the wind, and this idiot that steals my makeup is my brother, Kankuro. A pleasure to meet you, Tamari-chan." The blonde stated as he gently took hold of the Suna girl's hand and gave a light kiss on her knuckles, causing her to blush even more at the gesture. "It's not makeup," Kankuro exclaimed, interrupting the moment between the two blondes. "It's war paint, if you say so." Naruto shrugged, turning his attention back to the Suna boy. "As I said, drag night is on Tuesdays at the Rusty Kanai, enjoy yourself." This earned another round of laughter from Sakura, Temari, and Konohamaru, causing the black-clad Suna teen to fume further as his hands itched to pull the massive bundle that was secured to his back out, and put the blonde upstart in his place. Meanwhile, the bun-haired girl still seemed to be in a trance as she stared blankly at the blonde Hanyu. Noticing this, Naruto moved over to her and snapped his fingers in front of her face a few times before she snapped out of her daze. "Hey, welcome back, have a nice trip." Naruto smirked, causing the poor girl to blush in embarrassment. "Sorry, I just kind of zone out when I see a new unique weapon, being Konoha's weapons mistress and all." The dark brown-haired girl replied. "Name's Tenten Higurashi. Pleasure to meet you. Since you were spacing out, I guess I should reintroduce myself. I'm Naruto Uzumaki." He introduced himself for a second time, much to Tenten's embarrassment for being reminded that she had been daydreaming about the blonde's weapon, which prompted her to perk up and look at the blonde questionably. What exactly was that kind of weapon?" she asked. "This," Naruto asked as he summoned the black Tonto once more, still holding it in a reverse grip position, earning a nod from the bun-haired girl as her eyes started to glaze over upon seeing the weapon once more. "This is my dark blade technique from my bloodline. Essentially, it's a form of yin release, allowing me to manipulate the darkness element into physical form." "That is so cool." Tenten gushed as her eyes developed a star-struck look as she imagined all sorts of possibilities such a technique could produce. "It gets even better," Sakura commented as she approached the group, catching the bun-haired girl's attention. "Any weapon formed from his dark blade technique will not dull, lose its edge, and is pretty much indestructible." "Wait, I know you," Tenten commented as she pointed towards Sakura. "Aren't you one of those fangirls for that brooding emo Uchiha?" At this, Sakura couldn't help but allow her head to drop in shame at being reminded of possibly the worst mistake she had ever made in her short life so far. "Please don't remind me of that." The Pinkett sighed. "Those really were not my proudest of days. That's in the past now. Sakura-chan here has improved by leaps and bounds since her academy days." Naruto stated matter of fact, defending his mate. "Yeah, all it took was the bastard to nearly kill me to open my eyes." Sakura half grumbled, recounting the events that occurred during her first mission outside of the village. Hearing this, Tenten, Temari, Kankuro, and even Konohamaru's eyes widened in disbelief at the implication. "You don't mean that he—" Tenten couldn't even finish the question, clearly disgusted by the Uchiha's actions. "Yeah, bastard switched places with me so I could take the blows meant for him." The Pinkett growled. Thankfully Haku-chan wasn't aiming to kill, only to incapacitate. "Wait, you mean Haku that is currently working in the hospital?" The bun-haired girl inquired, having recalled seeing someone by that name tending to her teammates' injuries on occasion when they would go overboard on their training. "Yup," Naruto chuckled. "She's one of my girlfriends. Her dream is to be the #1 Iryo nin in all of the elemental nations." "Wait, what do you mean by one of your girlfriends?" Kankuro inquired, though both girls had the same question running through their mind as well. The short version is that Naruto-kun is the last of 2 clans. Sakura explained, catching the group's attention. "So lucky bastard is in the CRA then." The black-clad Suna boy commented, knowing full well the benefits of being in the program. A hint of jealousy in his tone. Though his lecherous thoughts had only earned him a bop on the head by an irate sister. "Yes, I submitted myself into the CRA, but not for the reasons you girls think," Naruto stated, seeing the angered looks from both Temari and Tenten. I took the initiative because I knew once my heritage got out, the council would force their daughters and others on me, and I refuse to be in any relationship that has no love in it. So by making the first move, I got to dictate my terms, and my terms are simple. Free choice. Hearing this, both Temari and Tenten calmed down slightly, a bit surprised that the blonde in front of them had such forethought to avoid having other women being put in such a predicament with no choice. Turning towards the pink-haired girl, the bun-haired girl spoke. "You're one of his girlfriends too, aren't you?" It was more of a statement than a question. "Yeah." Sakura blushed slightly. "I was already slowly gaining a crush on him during our mission to Nami no Kuni, but I fully fell for him when he took care of me after the incident. Since then, well, it's only been better." "Wait, that Uchiha prick is the last of his clan too, does that mean he can be in the CRA as well?" Tenten asked, a little worried, since after hearing what the raven-haired boy did to his own teammate, she knew there was very little chance he would be as kind as Naruto was with such a program. He was. Naruto sighed, tried to use the act to force Haku-chan and a few others to be with him. Fortunately, they were already involved with me, so they were spared from that fate. After that, Sasuke Tem threw a massive fit and pulled himself from the program. Shortly after, the old man banned him entirely from entering it in the future. "Ain't that right, Uke-chan?" Naruto commented, looking towards a tree branch just above the group, prompting the others to look up and see the lone Uchiha standing above them. A scowl on his face due to the blonde's new nickname for him as he jumped down, just outside of the group of people. The raccoon can come out to play as well. At this, a swirl of sand appeared in the center of the group, revealing a fair-skinned boy with short and spiky auburn hair. His green eyes lacked any pupils or eyebrows, with tanuki-like black rings around his eyes, as well as the kanji for love above his left eye. His attire consisted of a short-sleeved black bodysuit with an open neck, and almost full-length leggings. A white cloth wraps around his right shoulder and the left side of his hip, with a wide brown leather strap that supports the massive gourd on his back. His Suna Hitai 8 wrapped around the aforementioned leather strap. "Hihei Gaara." Kankuro stammered in fear at the appearance of his younger brother. Knowing full well the youngest of the three had observed his prior actions. "Listen, we were just messing around as all, and you are a disgrace to our village, Kankuro." The red-headed boy identified as Gaara stated coldly. "Now shut up, or I'll kill you." Meanwhile in Kurigakure, an auburn-haired beauty sneezed, interrupting her daydream about a certain blonde Hanyu, causing her to scowl. "Either Naruto-kun is thinking about me, or someone stole my line." She mentally pondered. "Well, Naruto-kun is allowed to fantasize about me, he is my fiancé after all. But if I find that someone stole my line, I will melt their balls off." Back in Konoha, Gaara felt a foreign sensation as a slight shiver traveled up his spine, prompting him to discreetly create a sand barrier around his crotch area, unnoticed to those around him. Mentally shaking off the strange experience, the raccoon-eyed boy turned his attention towards his fellow Suna shinobi with a glare. "It annoys me that you'd lose control in a quarrel with children." The red-headed Suna nin started coldly. "Have you forgotten why we came here?" "But Gaara, they started it." Kankuro attempted to defend himself. "The little shrimp slammed into me." "Kankuro, shut up." Gaara stated icily once more, though oddly enough didn't finish with the threat of death like he did the last time. "You're right, Gaara." The blade-clad, makeup-wearing Suna nin replied nervously. "I was out of line." "We're sorry Gaara," Temari said, equally afraid of the red-headed boy. "Sorry for my team's actions." Gaara sighed, turning his attention to Konoha nin. "I am Gaara of the Sand, Suna Genin here for the Chunin exams." Tenten Higurashi, weapons mistress of Konoha. The bun-haired girl introduced herself with a slight bow, though never took her eyes off of the three Suna nin. also partaking in the Chunin exams. Sakura Haruno, also participating in the exams. The Pinkett stated. Naruto Uzumaki, the Shadow Fox. The blonde Hanyu grinned. And yes, I am also in the exams. You should ignore these weaklings. I'm the only one you need to concern yourself with. The Uchiha sneered, causing the group to turn their attention towards him. Sasuke Uchiha. Whatever. Temari rolled her eyes at the raven-haired teen's antics. While she would say the raven-haired boy was cute, his attitude was a big turn-off. The blonde one though, not only was he cute, but he had a much warmer personality that seemed to make him easy to open up to. I wonder when all of this is over, if I could probably talk him into taking me on a date. He is part of the CRA after all. Kankuro watched as his sister developed a light blush when she looked at the blonde Konoha nin, grinning slightly to himself about the amount of black male material he had just acquired. However, Sasuke had also seen the blush and had other, far more selfish thoughts. If you prove yourself to be strong, woman, you'll be given the honor to bear my children, the Uchiha arrogantly stated, his eyes leveling on Temari. He then turned his eyes towards the bun-haired girl. The same goes for you. At this, both Temari and Tenten curled their lips in disgust, appalled by the boy's proclamation as he walked away from the group, feeling he had said his piece. The Uchiha's statement didn't sit well with the others present either, as Gaara made a silent vow to destroy the Uchiha. Even Konohamaru had a face of disgust at the boy's display of arrogance. Temari, Kankuro. Gaara called out, catching both his teammates' attention. We're leaving. Nodding, both of the Suna nin began to make their way towards the academy. However, the red-headed boy remained. Staring at Naruto, a sadistic smile spread across his face. You are interesting. Gaara commented, the psychotic grin never leaving his face. Mother is intrigued by you, and she really wants your blood. Naruto stood there, a bit confused at the red-headed words. Not the fact that the Suna boy had threatened to kill him, he was used to such threats, but by the fact that he referred to his mother. Shukaku was a male, right? The blonde mentally inquired of his vixen. Yeah, only myself and my sister, Matabi, are the only girls from all the Biju. Ari replied, equally confused as to why her brother's container was referring to him as his mother. So, I don't know why he is having his container call him mother. Questions for later I suppose. Naruto mentally sighed, though he did recall one other thing about the red-headed Jinchuriki. At any rate, I am going to need to fix his seal. It already looked weak and about to break at any moment. Guess I'll see you guys later. Tenten commented. It was nice to meet you both. Naruto-san, Sakura-san. Both Hanyus watched as the weapons mistress took off towards the academy, no doubt to meet up with her team, before Naruto turned his attention to Konohamaru, who was still standing where he had landed on his rear after the Suna nin had dropped him. Naruto-san. The young boy began. You want to know about Sasuke, don't you? Naruto finished for the boy, picking up on the young boy's thoughts of what he had just witnessed, earning a nod in confirmation. In short, Sasuke is the product of taking shortcuts. While he does have a natural talent, he has been given everything he has desired as no one has ever told him no. As such, he feels that anything he wants, whether it be a jutsu, a weapon, or even a person, should belong to him. Simply because he wants it. Is this what you meant when you said that there are no shortcuts? Konohamaru inquired, remembering the blonde's words months prior. At the time, his private tutor had told him to ignore the boy's words, and that Naruto was nothing but a delinquent that nobody loved or cared for. Now, he could see that not only were there people who loved him and cared for him, but that the blonde was also a highly skilled shinobi for his age. Considering the way he handled the large bully, and how he stared down the red-headed boy without so much as blinking. Mostly. The blonde nodded. But also because there is nothing in life that is free. Everything you want or desire, or even need comes at a price. Be it of monetary value, emotional or physical. I think I understand, the young boy replied, as he mulled over the blonde's words. From here on out, I will train hard and earn my spot as Hokage someday. I look forward to seeing the results. Naruto chuckled at the boy's enthusiasm, before turning to Sakura. Well, shall we? Let's. The pinkett grinned as she grabbed hold of the blonde's hand as the two departed in the direction of the academy. Seemingly unaware that a pair of eyes were watching them. Uruka. The scarred Chunin followed after the two remaining members of Team 7, having just witnessed their exchange with the three foreign genin from Sunagaku. Uruka had to admit that he was impressed with how his surrogate brother had handled the three Sunanin. Able to de-escalate the situation before it escalated further. What had surprised him further was learning that his own teammate was one of his girlfriends. While he knew that Naruto had submitted himself into the Clan Restoration Act, he was unaware of all the girls involved with the blonde, and last he recalled, the Haruno girl was head over heels for the Uchiha boy. He momentarily pondered what could have led to the girl switching her focus from one boy to the other. Though he had to admit that it was a change for the better. It seemed as if Naruto had managed to get the girl off her diet and take her kunoichi career far more seriously, as she appeared to have developed some muscle mass. Not to mention her posture was one of self-confidence. Something she severely lacked during the academy. Still, with those two together, I know exactly how I can test him. Uruka thought to himself before he disappeared from his position, hoping to catch the two of them off guard before they reached the academy. Getting into position a few meters ahead of the duo, Uruka ensured his disguise was in place, posing as a rogue Iwa nin with a vendetta against the boy's father. He watched as the blonde leaned over and whispered something in the ear of his pink-haired teammate and lover, causing her to giggle slightly before he made his move. With the speed and accuracy of years of training, Uruka had effortlessly dropped behind Sakura and grabbed hold of her to retrain her movements while he brought a kunai up to her throat in a threatening gesture. This prompted Naruto to turn and look at their assailant, an irate expression on his face. Clearly not pleased that someone was threatening his mate in such a fashion. Now, this is what you're going to do, boy. Uruka instructed, disguising his voice via a seal on his throat. You are going to bring all of your father's scrolls to the top of the Hokage monument. And if I don't? Naruto inquired in an eerily calm voice, which kind of shook Uruka. Then I will just have to spill these pretty little things all over the ground. The disguised Uruka threatened, further implying the point by bringing the kunai closer to the girl's neck. Unseen to him though, his would-be hostage had a bored expression on her face. She knew she was in no real danger as she was well aware that any injury he may give her would be nothing, as her physiology would heal any injury she may receive. I have a better idea. The blonde spoke, his voice still holding the cold as a steel tone. You're going to let her go, and I may let you walk away with most of your limbs attached. I don't think you quite understand the situation you are in. So let me enlighten you, boy. Uruka growled. However, he didn't get a chance to react as suddenly his hostage disappeared from his grasp, literally falling within the shadow below them. At the same time, Naruto had dropped into his own shadow and within the blink of an eye, the blonde had rocketed out of the shadow beneath Uruka, whereas Sakura had re-emerged in the spot where Naruto had once been standing. Connecting with the poor Chunin's jaw with a powerful impact, lifting the man off of his feet by nearly half a meter. However, the blonde's assault was not over just yet, as he rounded in mid-air and brought a sharp kick into the man's sternum, sending him flying back into the wall with enough force to crack the concrete. With his vision all blurry, Uruka could barely make out the blonde that was now stalking towards him. Struggling slightly, he lifted off his mask that had concealed his face and deactivated the seal that was on his throat, returning his voice to normal. Wait, it's me. He gasped out, trying to catch his breath. It's me, Naruto. I know, Uruka-sensei. The blonde grinned mischievously. I actually knew the entire time. This caused the scarred Chunin to freeze in shock. If what the blonde genin said was true, he knew it was him the entire time, and still allowed it to play out. If you knew it was me, then why did you attack me like that? Uruka inquired, casting a glare at the young Hanyu. And furthermore, how did you know it was me? In order, you threatened my mate. My pride in her honor would not allow that to stand. So you had to be punished. You should be thankful I held back. Naruto stated, the grin never leaving his face. As for how I knew it was you, aside from your scent, I picked up your chakra signature when we were talking with Sunanin. Uruka could only allow his jaw to drop, having been informed that the young blonde had had him pegged pretty much as soon as he came into the area. Making the instructor wonder just how good the boy's sensory abilities were. Anyways, as fun as it's been, Uruka-sensei, we really need to get to the academy before the exams start. The blonde stated as he began walking away, with Sakura falling in step alongside him. Catch y'all later. Uruka let out a small groan in pain as he watched the two disappear down the road. Leaning back on the concrete wall, he reluctantly had to admit that the boy he saw as a younger brother was more than ready for the exams before him. As he lay there, a shadow loomed over him. I take it he passed your test, Uruka-san. Academy. As the two Hanyus approached the academy entrance, they were greeted with a disgruntled Uchiha waiting for them. Seeing the two arrive, the brooding Avenger kicked off the post he was leaning against and made his way towards the two, all the while glaring at the blonde. About time you two showed up. He remarked with a sneer. I've been waiting for nearly an hour. First off, you've only been here 20 minutes, at max. So stop being such a drama queen. Naruto pointed out. Secondly, you have no choice but to wait for us, since the exams require the entire team. Whatever, let's just go already. Sasuke stated, turning towards the academy entrance. We've wasted enough time. Well, he seems to be in a good mood. The blonde commented, earning a giggle from his pink-haired mate. But it seems he has it out for you more than usual today. Sakura commented, noticing the increase of glares directed at the blonde Hanyu during each encounter. He ran into Izumi-chan and I while we were returning from our date. Naruto informed her. Made some disparaging remarks about her and the usual, you should submit to me and redeem yourself, tirade. Izumi-chan shut him up quickly though, when she said she renounced her Uchiha heritage and stated she would proudly take up the Uzumaki name. Ah, so that's why he is in such a lovely mood. The Pinkett chuckled. Well, let us be off. Naruto stated. His royal duck will be upset if we don't make haste. This of course earned another giggle from his pink-haired mate. Entering the academy, they were greeted with a swarm of participants for the exams. Some of which were just standing around and talking with their teams, while others were attempting and in most cases, failing, to intimidate other teams. Though it wasn't missed to the two Hanyu that a number of the male participants were leering at Sakura with lust-filled eyes, though both shrugged it off, knowing full well that a majority of the teams wouldn't even make it to the end. Moving through the crowd of genin, the trio went up the first flight of steps, only to be greeted with an even larger crowd surrounding a single door, labeled 301, with two genin seemingly standing guard at said door, preventing others from entering the room. This was further punctuated when one of the genin guarding the door delivered a brutal blow to a green-suited boy with a bowl-cut hairstyle, sending him skidding across the floor. Is someone as talentless as you really planning to take the Chunin exams? Why bother? The genin with messy brown hair stated condescendingly. Bunch of wet behind the ears snot noses. You said it. His partner smirked. Please just let us in. A familiar bun-haired girl pleaded, approaching the two guarding the door. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly as he watched the genin with the messy hair. The blonde could see his muscles tense ever so slightly, showing the telltale sign that he was about to attack the girl approaching him. In the blink of an eye, it appeared as if the blonde Hanyu had disappeared from sight, only to reappear in between the bun-haired girl and the genin. Blocking a kick aimed at the girl's head, earning a gasp in shock from the girl, and a grunt of annoyance from her would-be attacker. Now, that wasn't very nice. Naruto started while still gripping the boy's shin before roughly pushing it away, causing the boy to stagger slightly before regaining his balance. He then turned and smiled at the bun-haired girl. "Hey Kuma Haim." Tenten couldn't help but to blush at the blonde's nickname for her, Bear Princess. Namely because it was different from the usual, Panda, nicknames she was usually stuck with, giving her a growing hatred for the beast. "Good to see you, Naruto-san." She bowed slightly, hoping to hide her blush. "Now, why would you attack a fellow Konoha genin?" the blonde inquired, turning his attention back towards the two genin blocking the door. "You misunderstand," the messy-haired genin stated. "We're just trying to spare you is all." His partner finished for him. "The Chunin exams are incredibly difficult," the messy-haired one continued. "We should know, we've failed it 3 times so far. There are those who have made it, only to immediately give up being a shinobi afterwards," the other one stated. "Others ended up being crippled and some reduced to nothing more than mere vegetables. And these are only the ones who have survived." This earned a chorus of murmuring echoing through the crowd of genin hopefuls, many of which were beginning to doubt their resolve and their ability to complete the exams. Besides that, Chunin are cell commanders. They lead their units. The messy-haired boy continued his lecture. "The responsibilities for failed missions and dead shinobi rest firmly on their shoulders. And you little punks have the nerve to think you are ready for this." The other snorted. Once again, a second chorus of murmuring could be heard flowing through the crowd, however it ended when the sound of a single individual slowly clapping interrupted their thoughts as the crowd focused on the blonde genin in front of the two guards. "Impressive little speech there, Kotetsu," Naruto commented with a smirk as the identified Kotetsu's jaw hit the floor. "You did good too Izumo, though I gotta say, your henges make you both look uglier than usual." "How the hell did you know it was us?" both exclaimed, earning a chuckle from the blonde. "You can change your appearance, but you can't change your laziness." The blonde chuckled playfully. "Both of you were standing in the same posture you two always stand in at the main gates." Both of the eternal gate guards allowed their henges to drop, as they lowered their heads in shame for being outed so easily by a mere genin. "Whatever." A voice spoke up from the back crowd as a figure roughly pushed his way through. "Just drop this pathetic genjutsu. I have business on the 3rd floor. You're an idiot." Sakura sighed as she approached where Naruto was standing. That was to weed out those truly not ready for the exams. Now there will be countless more competition going forward. Good, more to witness an Uchiha elite as I dominate these exams. Sasuke smirked arrogantly, prompting both Naruto and Sakura to shake their heads in disappointment at their teammates' antics. Since their little setup had been exposed, but of the Chunin that had been disguised as genin lifted their genjutsu, revealing the flight of steps that lead to the next floor. Without saying a word, the lone Uchiha brushed past the two and ascended the stairs, not bothering to see if his teammates were following or not. Both haters were about to follow after their teammate when a voice called out to them, or rather, to Sakura. "You are Sakura, aren't you?" the bowl-haired boy said, approaching the two. "My name is Rock Lee. Would you like to go out with me? I'll protect you with my life." "Wah!" the pink kid exclaimed in confusion, as the boy's proposal had literally come out of nowhere. "I am going to have to respectfully decline Lee-san, as I already have a mate." Hearing this, the green-clad boy looked to the blonde that stood next to her before allowing his eyes to travel down, seeing the two holding hands. Seeing this, a fire of determination roared to life in the boy's eyes as he turned fully towards Naruto. "I challenge you for Sakura's hand." Rock Lee exclaimed exuberantly, flashing his sensei's trademark smile. I decline. Naruto simply stated, though there was an undertone of irritation in his voice at the unintentional insinuation that his mate was a mere prize to be won. Because Sakura-chan is not some prize to be won, like a trinket at a street festival. She is a strong-willed kunoichi with her own free will. At this, Lee realized how his words sounded and began to profusely apologize to the pinkett and the blonde before him. Both of which shrugged it off with a light warning to think before he speaks in the future. Of course this earned the duo a spiel of various challenges the green-clad genin would do to atone for his mistake. Meanwhile, Tenten's other teammate glared at the blonde with intense hatred. To him, Naruto was the sole reason that both Hinata and Hanabi had rebelled against the clan elders' teachings and had forsaken their clan's proud traditions. Silently, the Hyuga prodigy seethed at the blonde as he watched the duo ascend the flight of steps. Something wrong, Neji? Tenten inquired, seeing the look that washed over her teammate's face. Nothing, we're wasting time, he commented as he began to make his way up the stairs. Just you wait, Naruto Uzumaki. I will end you and bring honor back to the Hyuga clan. Team 7. The trio that made up Team 7 proceeded to make their way along the hallway towards the real room that the tests were to begin in. To their surprise, they saw Kakashi leaning against the wall, reading the next volume of Demon Heart, and by the looks of it, it was almost finished with it. This of course prompted both Naruto and Sakura to smirk knowingly. Good to see you all made it, he lazily commented, not looking up from his book. It would have been a shame if one of you decided not to come, or attempted to do this on your own. What do you mean? Sasuke asked. It's rather simple, the silver-haired Jonin stated as he closed the book, looking over his team. This exam is designed for 3-man teams. As such, if a full team is not present, they would not be allowed to partake in the exams. At this, both Sakura and Naruto couldn't help but smile at this. Both had a suspicion that something like this would be involved with the exams. Why else would entry into the exams require not only the team's sensei to sponsor them, but also require all 3 team members to submit their own forms? Anyways, I wish you 3 the best of luck. Kakashi gave his trademark eye smile. And look out for one another. Don't worry Tada-sensei. Sakura grinned. We got this. Naruto finished. Sasuke merely gave his typical grunt in response as he set off towards the exam room, with the other 2 following behind him. However, Naruto briefly stopped and reached into his jacket. Hey, Tada-sensei. Naruto called out as he tossed the item he just removed from his jacket towards the silver-haired Jonin. Catch. Kakashi caught the item in question and took a moment to examine it before he smirked, as he looked over the cover of the 3rd volume of the Demon Heart books. I wonder why he had a spare copy. The silver-haired Jonin mentally questioned as he watched his 3 students disappear through the large doors of the examination room. So there I was. Hundreds of bandits and enemy shinobi had surrounded my comrades and I. Shino had fought bravely, taking out a few of the bandits before they had finally overwhelmed him and knocked him out. Kurenai-sensei, Hinata-chan, and Sakura were all huddled in the corner of the campsite, as dozens of bandits closed in on them. It was clear as to what these pathetic fools intended to do with these fine ladies, and my destined mate. To my right, the blonde was in a fetal position, crying his eyes out. Too scared to do anything. A really pathetic sight. Seeing this, I knew what had to be done and that I was the only one who could do it. Looking up at the full moon, I closed my eyes and allowed my inner beast to take form. A secret I never told anyone about, not even my own family. When I was young, the divine feral being known as Fenrir had chosen me to be her avatar on the mortal earth, and later to be her mate in the afterlife. So I allowed my feral side to come out, my eyes sharpening, my teeth turning into fangs and my fingernails turning into claws. All to dispense justice on those that would threaten my pack. With a bestial roar, I launched forward and began to swing wildly in every direction, cleaving the scum in half with each blow from my powerful arms. As I tore through the sea of bandits, body parts were strewn left and right, littering the ground with blood and gore. Screams of pain and agony erupted from my enemies as I cut through them, until I finally reached my destination. Panting heavily, I stood before my dear sweet mate in my bestial form, my claws dripping with blood from my enemies. I watched as their eyes combed over my inhuman body, fearing rising up within as I worried whether or not they would accept this side of me. However, as I gazed down at the three beauties before me, I saw it in their eyes. The complete look of awe and admiration, and above all, acceptance. Kiba, my destined mate stammered, clearly entranced by my strong alpha appearance. Hinata-chan, the blonde dope called out as he rushed to her side, grasping her in a hug. Are you all right? Seeing this, I couldn't stop myself from growling in displeasure of this weak fool holding my destined mate. However, what happened next had surprised me. My dear sweet Hinata had pushed the idiot off her, and glared at him. Don't you dare touch me. She scowled at the shocked blonde dove. Be you but Hinata-chan. The weak fool stuttered. Shut up, done. My precious little flower sneered. How could I ever love someone as weak as you? I couldn't help but to smirk at her words. To even further prove her point, she got up from her sitting position and walked over to me, wrapping her arms around my strong left arm, leaning her head on my shoulder. It is clear now that Kiba-kun is an alpha male and deserves my love and loyalty. Hinata proclaimed. Hinata-chan is right. Sakura spoke up, taking my right arm, mirroring Hinata's actions of leaning her head on my shoulder. You are nothing but a pathetic loser, but Kiba-kun is strong and powerful. Grinning, I looked down at the blonde dove who was not crying in shame due to the beautiful angels insulting him. However, despite how weak and pathetic he was, I couldn't allow this to go on. After all, the dove was still part of my pack, and as a true alpha, I had to look out for all members of my pack, even the weak ones. Ladies, please do not blame him. I spoke, catching the two lovely ladies' attention, both of which swooned at the sound of my rich, baritone voice. After all, it is hard to compete with an alpha such as me. You're right, Kiba-kun, Hinata stated, snuggling onto my arm. No one can compete with you. Still, Kurenai-sensei commented as she approached me, swaying her lovely hips from side to side in a sensual manner. I will need to report to Hokage-sama about his failure to act, which may have him stripped of being a shinobi. It is probably best that way. I replied with a sigh. So, Kiba-kun, Sakura smirked. How about all three of us thank you for your bravery and opening our eyes, allowing us to see what a true alpha is. And that's exactly what happened. Kiba grinned as he had finished his tale of how his first kill went. All the while, the group of Konoha genin had confused looks on their faces, whilst Hinata had her nose buried in the book she was reading, seemingly ignoring what was being said before she cast her gaze upwards, and peered at the group of genin whom were now gawking at the Inuzuka boy, doubt evident on their faces. He forgot to mention what happened afterwards. The Hyuga heiress commented with a smirk. What happened after? Kiba asked, a little confused. You know, where I took you to my home, stripped you down and blindfolded you before I tied you to my bed. She grinned even more, earning a perverted look from the feral boy as he nodded his head in agreement with what she was saying. Oh yeah, that part. He replied, wiping the drool from his mouth. And then I put on my 12-inch strap-on and mounted you well into the morning hours. She finished with a sadistic smirk as she watched all the color drain from his face. Meanwhile the group of genin began to burst out laughing at the poor boy's misfortune. And you loved every minute of it. Hinata finished in a sing-song voice, completely shattering the poor boy's masculinity in front of everyone. While it is natural for one with a fragile ego to exaggerate events, they usually keep it within the realm of what is logically possible. Shino commented in his monotone voice, causing the poor feral boy to sulk even further. Besides, I do not think Kurenai-sensei would appreciate you depicting her in such a manner. Hearing this, the feral boy felt a lump form in the back of his throat. In the boy's delusional fantasy, he had completely forgotten that his sensei was a staunch opposition against anything perverted in nature. Something she had made very clear to the rest of his team when she had trapped him in a genjutsu after he introduced himself in his dream to have, in his own words, dozens of hot bitches to surround himself with. His sensei's retribution had been swift and severe. Kiba unconsciously shivered at the memory, not wanting to relive the details of the genjutsu ever again. Damn, and here I thought I was going to be given the privilege of becoming your slave. A voice sounded from behind the Inuzuka, causing the feral boy to silently groan, turning to face none other than Naruto and the rest of Team 7, with the aforementioned blonde smirking. Fortunately for the young Inuzuka, all the attention had shifted from him as a loud squeal echoed throughout the room. Sasuke-kun, a platinum blonde girl exclaimed as she leapt on the back of the lone Uchiha. Following behind her were her two teammates, Shikamaru and Choji. Where have you been, cutie? When I heard your team was going to participate in the exams. She grinned, attempting to snuggle into him as the raven-haired boy leaned further away from her. I could hardly wait. It's so exciting to see you again after all of this time. While this was a usual scene most of the Konoha genin were used to, many felt that something was missing. Slowly, the group of Konoha hopefuls cast their eyes over to the blonde girl's rival, only to find her merely frowning at the scene playing out before her before turning her attention back to her blonde teammate. Get off me, Ino. Sasuke grunted as he roughly pushed the blonde girl off of his back, causing her to stumble slightly. It wasn't missed that the platinum blonde girl looked hurt by the boy's rejection, but she quickly shook it away before turning her attention to her rival. Narrowing her eyes as she watched the pinkett converse with Naruto, all while laughing and giggling in response to what the whiskered teen would tell her. To the blonde girl's shock, Hinata had joined the duo, giving Sakura a welcoming hug, before turning and wrapping her arms around Naruto's neck and leaning in, giving him a heated kiss before snuggling into the blonde boy's arms. Oi! Forehead! Ino called out, snapping out of her shock as she approached the trio, all of whom had turned their attention to her. What do you want, Ino pig? The pinkett grinned, using her former rival's nickname. Ino was silent for a handful of seconds, a little caught off guard, as the usual spiteful tone of the insulting name wasn't there. Instead it felt more playful than anything else. Pushing those thoughts away, she focused on the pink-haired Kunoichi. Noting that her former best friend now stood a bit more confident, not to mention the black lowlights that streaked her bubble-gum pink hair, very similar to how Naruto's hair color was. I need to speak with you. The blonde girl started before grabbing the pinkett by the wrist and leading her away into a corner of the room that was empty. Once Ino was satisfied that they were a comfortable distance away from any prying ears, she turned and faced Sakura. All right, spill it on your forehead. Spill what exactly? Sakura squinted an eyebrow. What the hell is going on between you and Naruto Baka? Ino pressed, narrowing her eyes. Though she did not notice Sakura clenching her fist at the insult directed at her mate. Last time I saw you, you were leaving his apartment. And now you've even started dyeing your hair to make it look like his. Calm down, Sakura. Inner commented. Remember, she doesn't know yet. I will ask you not to refer to my mate in such a manner. Sakura started with a clipped tone, causing a slight shiver to travel down the blonde girl's spine. However, one thing did stick out in the young Yamanaka, and that was the fact that Sakura referred to Naruto as her mate, not boyfriend. This further confused the blonde, as she recalled just moments ago that Hinata had been kissing the Uzumaki boy. As for the rest, the pinkett continued, crossing her arms over her chest. I simply grew up. What do you mean, grew up? Ino inquired. And what do you mean, mate? Both are exactly as they sound, Ino. Sakura replied with a smile. During my first mission outside of the village, not only did I get my first real taste of what it is to be a kunoichi, but I also got to learn just what kind of person Naruto-kun really is. But Hinata, Naruto-kun is the last of his clans. The Pinkett interrupted, knowing full well what the blonde was going to say. As such, he is in the Clan Restoration Act. Meaning he is required to take multiple wives to build his clans back up. Last of his clan, wait, that means Sasuke-kun could be in it as well. Ino exclaimed excitedly, only to see the Pinkett shaking her head. No. Sasuke was in it a few months back. Sakura informed her. But because he didn't get the girls he wanted, he tossed a fit and got himself removed from the program. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Hokage-sama yourself. What girls did he want? Ino asked, a little disheartened by the fact that the brooding Uchiha was no longer in the program. He demanded for Hana Inuzuka, Hanabi Hyuga, and Haku. Sakura frowned. Even worse, he wanted Haku's chakra to be sealed, supposedly for her own protection. What? Why? Ino blinked, finding it odd that he would request someone's chakra to be sealed. And why wouldn't the girls want to be with Sasuke-kun? Sakura could only shake her head at the blonde's antics, though she did feel a sting of embarrassment as she took in her former rival's actions. Please tell me I wasn't that bad. She mentally begged. Actually, you were worse. Ino pointed out hesitantly. Whereas Ino would only yell at others for insulting the bastard, you were a bit more physical. Sadly, your main target was Naruto-kun. Sakura couldn't help but to mentally grimace at that reminder. You really don't want to know why he wanted Haku-chan's chakra sealed. The Pinkett replied, clenching her fist tightly at the memory. I will just say that Haku-chan had embarrassed him in Nami no Kuni. As for the girls, well, Sakura couldn't help but blush. They were kind of already with Naruto-kun, well, except Hanabi, she was sort of a last-minute thing. It took nearly a full minute for Ino to completely comprehend and process what she had just been told. Though the main thing that stuck out was that Naruto, the orange-wearing idiot all throughout the academy years, had not one or two, but 6 girlfriends at once, since she had already known about the relationship between the blonde and the snake mistress of the village. Even further, the girls the blonde teen was involved with were not just random kunoichi or civilians, but with the exception of Sakura, Haku, and Anko, were members of prominent clans. How the hell did this all happen? Ino exclaimed, trying to wrap her head around this bit of information. Well, Sakura couldn't help but grin. Perhaps you should try and get to know Naruto-kun better and see for yourself. Ino could only gawk at the Pinkett. But what about Sasuke-kun? I'll tell you the same thing Naruto-kun told me. Sakura shrugged. Pursue him if you want, just don't endanger yourself in doing so. I just hope you don't learn what kind of person Sasuke is the same way I did. Hearing this, Ino frowned. From the sounds of things, something had happened between Sakura and Sasuke. Something bad. However, before she could question it, a loud commotion drew the 2 girls' attention over to where their teams were. Just in time to see 3 Oto Shinobi attack a silver-haired Konoha genin with glasses that neither had seen before. We should probably see what that is about. Sakura commented as she proceeded to return to her team's location, mainly to Naruto's side. Leaving Ino behind to ponder their discussion. What happened between Forehead and Sasuke-kun that she has completely given up on him? She thought. Moments earlier. Would you guys do us all a favor and just shut up? A silver-haired teenage boy with glasses said as he approached the noisy group of genins. Who the hell are you? Kiba demanded. My name's Kabuto. The now identified Kabuto briefly introduced himself before he cast his gaze over the group of genins before him. You kids need to open your eyes. And why's that? Inuzuka inquired with a growl. The new arrival said nothing, and merely gestured at a group of shinobi, wearing the Amagakure headband. All of which were glowering at the rookies, causing the feral boy to flinch slightly under their stare. Everyone's on edge waiting to take the exam. Kabuto explained. I wanted to give you a heads up before someone snaps and beats the crap out of you, but it's probably unavoidable. Like all rookies, you think you know everything. I remember what it was like. This earned a series of frowns from the newly dubbed rookie group. So you're saying this is your second time attempting the exams? Tenten asked. Seventh actually. The silver-haired bespectacled teen chuckled. Twice a year for 4 years now. Wow, you must then. Kiba commented with a scoff. Maybe. Kabuto shrugged, ignoring the insult. Or maybe these exams are much harder than you think. If you've been through this 7 times already, you should have some helpful advice for us rookies, right? Naruto commented with a slight grin. Suppose I could. The silver-haired teen replied with a grin of his own, pulling out a deck of what appeared to be playing cards. What are those? Choji inquired. These little babies are known as shinobi skill cards. Kabuto gave a brief explanation. To put it simply, they contain information about the skills we use. Transformed into symbols and burned into the cards using chakra. It's taken me 4 years to collect all of the intelligence needed for this exam. He continued. In all, there are over 200 cards. Do you also have dossier cards? Sasuke asked as he approached the bespectacled teen. Someone participating you have a particular interest in. Kabuto grinned. Gaara from Sunagakure, Rock Lee of Konoha, and Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. The raven-haired boy listed off the names, catching the group's attention, as Naruto narrowed his eyes at the Uchiha and the silver-haired teen. I don't trust this Kabuto, Naruto-kun. Ari commented with a growl in the back of his mind. I agree, he smells like snakes. The blonde replied mentally. Just like Mizuki Tem. Keep an eye on him. Mentally nodding, Naruto turned his full attention back to the cards just as Kabuto channeled some of his chakra into 3 separate cards. Before flipping one over and looking it over, reading the information that appeared on the back. Let's see here, Rock Lee of Konoha. Kabuto read off. He's a year older than you. To date, his team has completed 20 D-ranked missions, and 11 C-ranked missions. His team's sensei is Might Guy, and his taijutsu physical skills have grown exponentially over the past year. Though he has no other talents worth mentioning. Next is Gaara of the Sand from Sunagakure. Oh wow. He commented, giving an impressed whistle as he read over the card. No D-ranked missions, 8 C-ranked missions and 1 B-ranked mission. Not many rookies get B-ranked assignments. Sadly, since he is from another country, I have less of him, but I do have one thing very interesting about him. He's come back from every mission completely unscratched. Lastly, we have Naruto Uzumaki. Kabuto said as he flipped over the last card. Also known as the Shadow Fox of Konoha, an interesting alias. Member of the illustrious Team 7, under Kakashi Hatake. Their team has completed 12 D-ranked missions, 1 B-ranked mission, and 2 A-ranked missions. Silence and shock echoed throughout the group at the revelation of the team's mission accomplishments. While it was extremely rare to get a B-ranked mission as a genin, it was nearly unheard of to receive an A-ranked mission, let alone 2. And to have completed them. Wow. Kabuto commented, clearly impressed and secretly worried. Anyways, during the academy he was considered the dead last of his class, however field reports completely contradict that assessment. Furthermore, he seems to have a unique bloodline that gives him limited power over the darkness element and shadows. Lastly, he is the last of 2 clans, the Uzumaki and one other that is not known. Also seems like he has already got a jump start on rebuilding his clans, with his fiancés being Kabuto was cut off as the card he was reading from began to crumple in on itself as dark energy surrounded it. Looking up, he could see Naruto glaring down at him. "They don't need to know about my personal life." The blonde growled. "And awfully suspicious that you would have such detailed information on me, considering this is my first time taking the exams." "Hey, sorry about that, my friend." The silver-haired teen attempted to placate the upset Hanyu. "And I may have bribed a few higher-ranked shinobi for some additional information. Which could be considered borderline treason, since you've been friendly with this information with foreign shinobi present," Naruto pointed out, causing the bespectacled teen to gulp in fear. "So, anything else you can tell us?" Shikamaru asked, allowing the silver-haired teen to change the direction of the topic. "Not really, other than a new village has entered this year's exams." Kabuto shrugged, putting his cards away. "Some small backwater village called Otogakure. I don't think they will be much of a threat." "Hey, whatever, bring them all on," Kiba exclaimed. "I'll show everyone what a true alpha is." At this, nearly all of the Konoha group resisted the urge to groan at the feral boy's ignorance. Looking as most of the room was now glaring at the Konoha group, signifying that the Inuzuka boy had made them all targets. However, unknown to most of the Konoha group, a trio of shinobi were swiftly making their way through the grumbling crowd. Most of which were plotting to do horrible things to the Inuzuka boy once they got him alone. Though the trio of shinobi were after a different target as they flickered through the crowd before a bandaged individual leapt up from the crowd and came barreling down towards Kabuto. The mummified-looking Oto Genin took a swing at Kabuto, though the silver-haired teen seemed to have expected the attack and merely leaned back enough for the attack to merely pass in front of him. However, despite dodging the attack, the bespectacled teen's glasses shattered seemingly from nothing, much to the shock of the Konoha rookies. Though it didn't stop there, as Kabuto suddenly doubled over and emptied his stomach onto the floor. He used the sound to attack Kabuto, fitting for a genin from the village hidden in the sound. Naruto surmised with a slight grin, as his ears buzzed from the almost inaudible noise coming from the strange-looking device on the Oto Genin's wrist, prompting him to use his chakra to protect his eardrums. Shifting his attention from the downed form of Kabuto, the blonde Hanyu gazed at the three Otogakure genin, taking in their appearances and sizing them up. To the left, was a male with spiky black hair, wearing an outfit that spelled out, "Death," on the front. In the center was the mummified genin that had attacked Kabuto, his head leaning to the side at an odd angle, and lastly, there was the sole female of the group. Said female seemed to feel his eyes upon her and turned to look at him. Naruto had to admit that she was pleasing to the eye. Despite her loose-fitting outfit, it was clear that she took her training seriously. Seeing her looking at him, Naruto couldn't help but to grin and wink at her, prompting her to lightly blush at the short exchange. "Add that to your cards." The spiky-haired Oto genin started with a smirk. "Did I miss something?" Sakura asked as she took her spot next to her mate. Just the opening ceremonies." Naruto shrugged. "All right, maggots, sit down and shut up." A loud voice called out from the front of the room, prompting all the occupants to turn their attention to the new arrivals at the front. The most prominent of the new arrivals was a largely built man with a scared face, and a bandana covering the top of his head. "Sorry to have kept you waiting." The scared man grinned. "My name is Ibiki Morino. I'm the proctor and chief examiner for the first part of the exam." Upon hearing his name, many of the genin gulped in fear, as the man had earned quite the reputation in torture and interrogation, as well as being a master at mind games. "You three of Otogakure." Ibiki singled out the three genin. "Attempt something like that one more time and you will be disqualified, understand?" "Sorry, it's our first exam and we got a little excited." The mummified genin commented with a slight chuckle. "Is that so?" Ibiki grinned, sending a shiver down mostly everyone's spine. "Then it is high time someone laid down a few ground rules." From this point forward, there will be no fighting without the express permission of the examining officer. And even if that permission is granted, anything that endangers another applicant's life is strictly forbidden. Any of you maggots who break this rule will be immediately disqualified, no second chances. Got it? So in other words, the spiky-haired Oto Genin smirked. This is a test for girly men. Ignoring the Oto Genin, the proctor proceeded to the front of the classroom, and stood in front of the chalkboard before turning around to face the participants. Before you entered the room, you were given a number. The proctor called out, "Find the seat that matches your number." After a few moments of scrambling, each of the applicants had found the seat that coincided with the number they were given upon entering the room. As luck would have it, Naruto had ended up next to Hinata, whilst Sakura was a bit further back in the next row. Once they were all seated, one of the Chunin handed out papers to everyone. "Papers face down until I give the signal," Ibiki called out, prompting a few of the genin to slam their papers down. "Now listen up. There are a few big rules that pertain to this test. Rule number 1, each of you starts with 10 points, each question you get wrong, you lose a point. Rule number 2, this written test is still a team event. Passing or failing will be determined by the sum of the points held by all 3 team members. Therefore, the objective is for each team to have as few deductions as possible. Rule number 3, if during the course of the exam a candidate does anything out of the ordinary, in other words, anything that leads the proctors to determine that he or she has cheated, we subtract 2 points from each member of the cheater's team. With that said, you have 1 hour to complete this exam, starting now." A flurry of papers being flipped over echoed throughout the room as the applicants attempted to tackle the written questions. Though the first thing any of them noticed was that the questions on the paper were far more advanced than a mere genin could possibly hope to answer. Naruto couldn't help but smirk as he read over the questions. Glancing to his side, he could see that Hinata had already activated her Byakugan and seemingly had begun to copy the answers of the person just in front of her. "Well, suppose I should get my answers as well," he mentally commented, allowing his shadow to disconnect from him, and completely disappear. As he did so, his shadow lurked within what he dubbed the shadow world, allowing it to move through the room without detection, since it was technically an entirely different world. Taking a moment to look around the room, he found the 3 Otogakur genin, with 2 of them answering the questions, while the third and sole female of the group appeared to be in a bad mood over something. It appeared as if the 2 males of the team were purposely leaving her out of the silent communication that had gone on between them. Though with the glint in both of their eyes, it was clear that they were no doubt planning to hold it over her head, in return for certain favors. Scowling at this, the dark clone set off to find someone to get the answers from. After a few minutes of searching, he found his target. Immediately, the dark clone gazed over the individual's answer and quickly jotted them down on a separate scroll, as well as a special message before rolling up the scroll and returning to the Oto girl's side. Allowing his hand to slip between worlds, he dropped the small piece of paper with the answers in front of her, causing her to jump slightly, not expecting for a piece of paper to literally appear out of nowhere. Its job done, the dark clone dismissed itself, giving Naruto its memories. The blonde couldn't help but smirk at his dark clone's actions, but overall, he approved of them. With the answers fresh in his mind, the blonde Hanyu quickly jotted down the 9 answers on the test before setting his pencil down and waited for the rest of the time to tick away. Meanwhile, a few rows behind him, a certain Oto Kunoichi couldn't help but to stare at the blonde who had given her the answers. 1 hour later, as the minutes ticked away, more and more participants were removed from the exam. Either from being caught cheating, or goofing around. There had even been one fool that had actually attempted to strike one of the proctors that had called him out for cheating. The end result was not good and required the young genin to be taken to the hospital for the injuries he received, the rest of his time wisely opting to silently depart the room. Aside from that, Naruto was greatly amused and impressed with the ingenious ways many of the participants were taken to getting their answers. The weapon's mistress, Tenten, had utilized wires and a mirror, which made the blonde Hanyu ponder how she was able to set it up without being caught. Gaara of the sand utilized his sand to form a floating eyeball to get his answers, whereas Sasuke had used his Sharingan to copy the pencil movements of the person in front of him. "Alright maggots, time's up," Ibiki called out from the front of the room, earning a series of groans and sighs of relief. "Get ready for the 10th question, but, before I give out the final question, I am adding one more rule. The absolute rule. First, you must choose." Ibiki grinned in a sadistic manner. "Whether or not to accept the 10th question." "What?" Tamari exclaimed, slamming her hands down on the desk in front of her. "What do you mean to choose? What happens if someone doesn't accept the question? If you reject the question, and don't even try to answer it, you lose all of your points immediately, and fail." The proctor informed the participants. "Not to mention, both of your teammates will fail right along with you." This earned a series of gasps from the remaining genin. None of them were too pleased at the prospect of failing if one of their own teammates decided to reject the question. However, Ibiki continued, "If you try to answer the question, and answer incorrectly, you will never be permitted to apply for the Chunin exams ever again." Hearing this, all of the genin participants went deadly silent, as each of them pondered the alternative. Either give up and have a shot at it next time when they feel more confident, or risk it all in a gamble at the cost of losing any further chances of being promoted. A handful had made the choice to reject the question, much to their teammates' chagrin. "Alright, enough mind games and a scary face." Naruto started with his fox-like grin. "I know for a fact you don't have the authority to ensure none of these guys are allowed to take the exams again, so just give us the question already." "Damn brat," Ibiki grunted, seeing as the blonde's words had steeled the rest of the occupants' nerves enough to feel confident in their ability to answer the final question. "I can see what Anko sees in him, absolutely no fear. Damn brat wasn't even the least bit intimidated by me." "Very well, listen up everyone." The proctor grinned. "You've just passed the first exam." "Wait, what do you mean passed?" A nameless kunoichi questioned. "What about the 10th question?" "There was no 10th question, beyond the whole, accept or reject, think." Ibiki laughed. "Then why did we have to suffer through the other 9 questions?" Tamari screamed out. While happy she passed the first exam, she was not happy that she had wasted a nerve-wracking hour on a pointless test. "That was a total waste of our time." "There was no waste," Ibiki commented, turning serious again. "Those questions had a purpose. Their purpose was to test your skills at spying. Of course, if you were clumsy or too obvious, you failed." Saying this, Ibiki reached up and removed his bandana, earning a series of gasps from the genins as he exposed his scarred and mutilated scalp. Burn scars, punctures from where screws were used, and long slashes. All clear signs that the man before them had been captured and tortured before. The 10th question, however, simply put, was to see if you had the courage and fortitude to move forward or not. Ibiki explained as he secured his bandana to his head once more. "There will be missions that will have you risk you and your team's lives for intel. Intel that could potentially save thousands of lives. In other words, sacrifice a few to save many." Naruto mused. However, the participants didn't have time to ponder the meaning behind the proctor's words as the window suddenly shattered and a black blur erupted in the front of the room with kunai flying out in 4 different directions. When the dust had settled, a lone figure stood in front of a black banner that read, "The sexy and engaged Anko Mitarashi Uzumaki. Second Proctor." All the while, Anko stood in front of the banner with a gleeful expression as her eyes met with Naruto's, who couldn't help but chuckle as he realized that this was the big surprise she had in store for them. "All right Gakis, you can read right," Anko shouted out. "I'm the second proctor for the exams, Anko Mitarashi Uzumaki. Wait, Ibiki, you passed 26 teams. You must be getting soft. Blame your fiancé." The scarred man shrugged. "I would have scared away more if not for this brat. Oh well, I'll cut that number by half before the next test is done." The snake mistress grinned sadistically. "Cut us down by half." Ino gulped. "Ooh, I get charged just by thinking about it," Anko stated, her grin never leaving her face, which unnerved a few more of the participants. "I'll explain in detail as soon as we arrive at the next examination area, so follow me." Without waiting for a reply, Anko leapt out the window she had jumped in through, prompting a few of the more daring, like Naruto, Sakura, and Hinata to jump out behind her, while the others opted to take the steps, hoping they would be able to catch up to the crazed second proctor. After a few minutes of running through the village, the remaining participants found themselves in front of a massive forest, surrounded by a large chain-link fence, as if it were built to keep things inside the ominous-looking forest, instead of keeping others out. This was further perpetuated by the numerous sounds on the fencing that warned of death upon trespassing. "Welcome to the arena for the second exam, Training Ground 44. Anko stated as she gazed over the genin in front of her, enjoying the fear rolling off of them. "Otherwise known as, the Forest of Death. This place looks creepy," commented one Ino Yamanaka, as the blonde genin stared through the fence, into the forest the second part of the exams was about to take place in. The sounds of various beasts and other such horrors that hid within the trees caused her to involuntarily shudder. "Hey, you're about to find out firsthand why they call this place, the Forest of Death." Anko grinned with a sadistic glint in her eyes as she stared at the blonde girl, causing her to flinch slightly. "PFF'd, you're just trying to psych us out, and I ain't falling for it," Kiba exclaimed with a tone of arrogance. "There is nothing in those trees out there that I can't handle." "Oh really? You're pretty aren't ya?" Anko grinned. In a quick movement, the snake mistress launched two separate kunai towards the genin. One scratched his cheek, allowing blood to flow freely, while the other went a little south and threatened the very thing that made him a boy. Earning a yelp of fright from the Inuzuka. Though before he could fully react, Anko had circled around him and brought a third kunai out from her pouch and placed it just at his jugular. A cruel chuckle rumbling in her throat as she leaned into the boy, taking a lick of his blood. There is a fine line between confidence and arrogance, the snake mistress informed the boy with sadistic glee. "One will carry you far. And the other, well, the other gets their entire team killed. And since my precious little Usagi-chan is on your team, I would be most displeased should anything happen to her because of your arrogance, understand?" For his part, Kiba could only dumbly nod in acknowledgement, as he fought back the urge to relieve himself in front of everyone. Whilst Hinata supported a healthy blush at the snake mistress nickname for her, especially with the reasoning behind such a name. "Good," the snake mistress smiled. "I'm glad we understand each other." Anko didn't finish as she felt a cold wave of bloodlust wash over her from behind, swiftly producing a fourth kunai and bringing it up just as a shadow fell over the two of them, turning to see a strange Kusagaker kunoichi standing behind them. A long tongue extended from the young woman's mouth as she offered the previously thrown kunai to the snake mistress. "Your kunai, I believe you dropped it." The woman started with a hint of amusement in her voice. "Thanks," Anko replied as she accepted the weapon being given back to her. "Though you should be careful with who you sneak up on while radiating such bloodlust." With a subtle gesture, Anko alerted the foreign kunoichi to the three figures that now stood behind her. To Kusa kunoichi's shock, three other Konoha genin had surrounded her without her being aware in the forms of Hinata, Sakura, and Naruto. And while their stances seemed relaxed, it was clear to the woman that they were ready to strike at the slightest indication that the snake mistress was in danger. These three were able to sneak up behind me without me knowing, but how? The kunoichi mentally pondered, cautiously taking a step back away from the second proctor. Sorry, I'll try to keep it under control from now on. Kusa Kunoichi apologized as she made her way back to where her team remained. But the sight of warm blood just gets me excited. Hey, looks like we have some hot-blooded teams on our hands. Anko grinned as she watched the kunoichi's retreating form. It should be fun. Anyways, listen up. The snake mistress turned to continue addressing the participants of the exam. Before we begin the second exam, there is something I need to hand out first. Ruffling through her trench coat pockets for a few seconds, the purple-haired proctor produced a small stack of papers. What are those? One of the genin inquired. These are consent forms everybody has to sign. The snake mistress replied. Why would we need to sign those? Another asked. Well, we want all the details covered before the first death occurs. Anko began in a sing-song voice. Sign before you go in, so that we cannot be held liable. After all, you wouldn't want to get me in trouble, would you? This earned a series of grumbling amongst the participants as a handful were reconsidering their resolve to continue on with the exam. Especially with the very real threat of potentially dying within the forest before them. First, before you wet yourselves, let me explain exactly what this phase of the exam will entail. Then you can sign the forms with the other two members of your team and turn them into the hut behind you. The proctor called out as she gestured to a stand that had two chunin waiting in a bored fashion. Now, about the exam. To simply put, this is a no-holds-barred survival test. The snake mistress continued. Survival huh? Shikamaru yawned tiredly. Another troublesome, pain-in-the-neck exam. To get you all acquainted with the terrain you will be entering. Anko began, holding up a large map of the training ground, allowing the group of genin to get a good look at the topography of the forest. Though, a few noticed that three particular genin didn't even spare a glance at the map. Training Ground 44 is bordered by a circular perimeter that is interrupted at regular intervals by 44 locked gates. She continued, not checking to see if anyone was paying attention or not. About 10 kilometers from each gate, in the center of the training grounds is a tower. That will be your final destination, but don't think it will be that easy to pass this part of the exam. During this phase of the exam you may use any skill and tool at your disposal. After all, it's kind of a fight to the death version of capture the flag, or in this case, capture the scroll. The snake mistress grinned, reaching into a second pocket from her trench coat. She produced two scrolls. One white and one black, with the kanji for heaven and earth. As you can see there are two scrolls. Anko pointed out the obvious. A scroll of heaven, and a scroll of earth. Your objective is to acquire both scrolls. And since there are a total of 26 teams, half of you will start out with a heaven scroll, and the other half will start with an earth scroll, and as I said, you will need both scrolls to pass. So, to simplify, your objective is to hold on to your own scroll while retrieving the scroll you need, before bringing both to the tower at the center. In other words, at least half of us will fail. Ino pointed out with a slight frown. That's right, I told you I would cut your numbers in half by the end of this phase. Anko grinned. And before I forget, there is a time limit. Hearing this, a series of gasps echoed throughout the participants. You have 120 hours in which to complete your objective. Exactly, 5 days in total. The snake mistress stated. 5 days. Ino exclaimed in shock. What are we supposed to do for food? The question came from Choji. That's your problem, was Anko's blunt reply. The forest is full of nature's bounty. Of course, it's also full of man-eating beasts, deadly insects and poisonous plants. I highly doubt 13 teams will actually pass this. The snake mistress mused loud enough for all to hear. As the time shortens, the trials will come harder and faster with less recovery time for any mistakes, accidents, or injuries. Not to mention you will be surrounded by enemies at all times. So you'll have to sleep with one eye open. Many of the genin shivered in fear as they imagined the multiple scenarios that Proctor had laid before them. So, in addition to those who die in their attempts to defend or capture a scroll, some of you are bound to succumb to exhaustion, exposure, and dehydration. Anko listed off a few more ways aspiring chunin could perish within the forest, adding to the doubt lingering within those whose resolve was crumbling already. Now, let's talk about the rules. First and foremost, any team that does not reach the tower in time, fails. If your team loses any members during this phase, you fail. And, under no circumstances are you allowed to leave the forest before the time is up. There is no recess, and no timeouts. The proctor listed off the rules. Lastly, and more importantly, you are forbidden to look at the contents of the scroll until you're inside the tower. What happens if we sneak a peek? A red-haired Kusagaker kunoichi with glasses inquired curiously. That's for those who look to know. Anko replied in a teasing tone, earning a grumble from the kunoichi that had asked. If any of you make it to Chunin, there will be times when you will be entrusted with top-secret documents. So consider this a test for your trustworthiness. Now, that's all the explanation you all get. The proctor stated. Sign your forms, retrieve your scroll and head to your assigned gate and get ready for the second phase of the exam to begin. Quietly, each of the genin read over the consent form they had been given. A few had immediately forfeited their chance to ascend the ranks, feeling they were not ready just yet to face such trials ahead. The remaining teams had proceeded to sign their forms and turn them in, claiming their scrolls in the privacy of an enclosed booth, away from prying eyes. While this was going on, Anko had made her way to where Naruto was waiting with his team. The blonde smiling as he felt his first mate, and official fiancé wrap her arms around him, prompting him to turn around to meet her. Try to go easy on them in there, Foxy-kun. She smiled. Physically, she knew this test posed no threat whatsoever to the blonde Hanyu. Aside from his own prowess, he knew this forest like he knew her body. Maybe even better. And you, Anko turned towards Sakura with a grin. Try not to wear him out in there. I make no promises. The pinkett grinned deviously. If you're not careful, I may steal him away for a while. Came Hinata's voice as she approached the trio, bringing the blonde's arm in between her bountiful chest, planting a soft kiss on his cheek. So keep your guard up, Sakura-chan. Is that a challenge, Hinata-chan? Sakura smirked as she took the blonde's remaining arm and pulled it close to her own body. Looks like you may have to sleep with one eye open for an entirely different reason, Naruto-kun. Anko teased. I don't know, maybe it will be fun. Naruto grinned, earning a blush from both Sakura and Hinata. In all seriousness, you three take care of yourselves in there. The snake mistress stated, bringing the three of them into a close hug. And may Jashin-sama watch over all of you. And you as well, hubby Haim. Naruto smiled before claiming her lips for a quick kiss. Breaking apart, Anko gave her blonde mate and future sister wives one last hug before returning to her post, while Hinata returned to her own team, not missing the glare Kiba was sending towards Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto and his team entered the enclosed booth to claim their scroll. After a very short discussion, it was decided that Naruto would hold on to the scroll to ensure they didn't lose it to another team. Upon receiving their scroll, they made their way to their assigned starting gate and awaited the signal for the exam to officially begin. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait long as the other proctors assigned to each gate had unlocked their gate and ushered the participants into the forest before locking the gate behind them. Team 7 wasted no time as they shot through the gates, putting as much distance between themselves and the other teams that had also been assigned to the same entrance. After traveling a fair distance into the forest, Naruto paused, stopping in the middle of a small clearing. Hold up a moment. The blonde called out, catching the attention of the other two. What is it, loser? The Uchiha grunted. Just, give me a minute. The blonde Hanyu stated before disappearing behind some of the foliage without another word, earning a curious look from his pink-haired mate, and a scoff of annoyance from the brooding emo. The hell is that done doing? We don't have time to be playing around. We need to get the scroll we need and get to the tower. Sasuke grumbled in annoyance. Hey, and here I thought you would be eager to wave your Uchiha greatness around for all to see. Sakura remarked, sarcasm dripping heavily in her tone. PFF'd, if these weak fools get beaten by a couple of trees then they are not worth my time. The raven-haired boy scoffed. Sorry guys, I had to take a leak. The blonde replied sheepishly, scratching the back of his head as he rejoined the group. Earning a grunt from the Uchiha, and an exasperated sigh from the pinkette while she merely chuckled at the blonde's bluntness. Anyways, we should get moving. No telling where the other teams are, and we need to make a plan to get the scroll we need. Sakura stated as she crossed her arms over her chest, pushing up her bust slightly. However, before that, there is something that needs to be addressed first. What's that, Sakura-chan? Naruto inquired. Without warning, Sakura disappeared from the spot she was standing in and appeared directly in front of Naruto. Her arm wound back as she delivered a massive strike to the boy's face, sending him bouncing across the clearing before hitting a tree with a heavy thud. What the hell, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked, spitting up a glob of blood as he shakily rose to his feet. Meanwhile, Sasuke could only look on, completely flabbergasted at what he was witnessing. Sakura, the girl who was supposedly head over heels for the blonde dove, was not beating the crap out of him for no apparent reason. Maybe now she will finally see that nothing can compete with a true elite like me. He mentally grinned at the prospect of claiming the pink-haired kunoichi for himself. Not bothering to answer the blonde, the pinkette launched another flurry of attacks. Hitting the poor boy with a combo of punches and kicks, launching him high into the air, where she appeared just above him and brought her heel down viciously into his midsection, sending him rocketing down into the earth below, creating a rather large crater for his size. Landing softly on the outside of the crater she had just made with the poor blonde's body, she growled as she descended down into the center, drawing a kunai as she did so. Why, Sakura-chan? Naruto choked out, unable to move due to the amount of pain he was in from the pinkette's onslaught. Simple. Sakura snarled as she narrowed her eyes, bringing her kunai up to the blonde's throat. You are not my mate. Not giving the now identified imposter time to reflect on her words, Sakura plunged her kunai into his throat, a sadistic grin stretching across her face as she did so as the imposter's henge broke, revealing him to be an unknown Omegakure genin. Much to the shock of the Uchiha, seeing the once timid fangirl effortlessly taking a life in front of him. Very nicely done, Sakura-chan. Came a voice behind the Uchiha, prompting the raven-haired genin to shoot around, only to see Naruto standing behind him. His arms crossed across his chest as he leaned against a tree. Though, I'm a bit disappointed in you, Uke-chan. You couldn't even tell that was someone hanged as me. I mean hell, he made the same mistake Mizuki-tem did. I don't use kunai or shuriken holsters. At this, Sasuke merely growled in response. Not liking the fact that the blonde was correct. The Uchiha was so wrapped up in his own personal delusions, that he didn't even notice that the Naruto that Sakura had been beating on had extra gear on. So, while I was playing with your doppelganger, what were you doing, Naruto-kun? The pinkette inquired. And don't tell me you were taking a leak. Naruto merely chuckled at that. Of all the excuses the imposter had to use, the fool had to use that one. Actually, I went and took care of his teammates. The blonde replied, reaching into his pocket and producing another scroll. Sadly, it was the same one they already had, but best to have a spare. Here, Uke-chan, you watch after this one. The Uchiha grunted as he caught the scroll that was tossed to him, not bothering to give his teammate a reply as he shoved the spare scroll into one of his storage pouches. Come on, let's go. Naruto instructed as he leapt up into a branch. We'll have more success getting the scroll we need near the tower, since that is where everyone is going anyways. PFF'd, who made you the leader? Done. It's not about being the leader, it's about basic logic. The blonde retorted. Fact is, every team will be converging on that tower, which by the way, only has one entrance. So we can either waste our time playing Jumanji out here, or we can wait near the tower and ambush an already tired team and get the scroll we need. Fine, Uchiha commented, not wanting to argue any further. Though, he didn't want to admit that it was a solid plan. Conserve their energy while waiting for a team that had already spent all of theirs hunting down their own scrolls. Without another word, the three took off once more through the trees. Naruto stretched his senses out as far as they could go to attempt to detect any other teams nearby, half expecting another ambush attempt from a possibly more skilled team. However, what the blonde Hanyu was not expecting was for a mighty gust of wind to come up out of nowhere while he was in mid-jump, blowing him away from his team. Much to Sakura's shock, she was firmly planted on one of the branches. Naruto-kun, the pinkett called out. Ku. A mocking laughter came from ahead of them, alerting both remaining members of Team 7 to the new arrival. I must say, I am surprised that the blonde one was the one to be caught off guard and separated. I had expected him to be skilled enough to evade my trap. But oh well, you two shall entertain me. Hearing this, Sakura narrowed her eyes, ignoring the Kusagaku Genin's taunts about her lover. Knowing full well that they were trying to bait her into doing something reckless. Since after all, they hadn't exactly kept it a secret they were a couple during the first exam. Though the pinkett couldn't put her finger on it, there was something unusual about the genin before them. The kunoichi before them seemed far too calm and collected for the survival test they were currently partaking in. Not to mention, Sakura couldn't sense any of the girls' teammates nearby, meaning she was confronting them by herself. Unless her teammates were hiding their chakra signatures, which would be near impossible for a mere genin to do. Which brought the pink-haired Hanyu to her next suspicion. While she could feel chakra coming from the kunoichi before them, it felt filtered and restrained. As if she were suppressing it. I suppose you'd like to steal my scroll of earth, wouldn't you? The Kusa kunoichi taunted, producing her scroll before them. Since I know you've already got a scroll of heaven. With a malicious smirk, the kunoichi allowed her unusually long tongue to slither out of her mouth and wrap around the scroll, as if it were a snake, and take it into her mouth. Swallowing the scroll whole, much to the shock, disgust, and a bit of arousal from the two genin of Team 7. Wow, can you imagine her using that tongue in the bedroom? Inner Sakura couldn't help but question, severely blushing as her perverted side of her mind began to come up with numerous other ways the tongue could be used for. Not now, inner Sakura chastised. In case you haven't noticed, there is something wrong about this entire thing. Now, shall we see just who will be stealing scrolls from whom? The kunoichi taunted with a sadistic grin on her face. In a fight to the death. Methodically, the Kusa kunoichi got into an aggressive stance while radiating a rather large amount of killer intent. Almost immediately, both Sakura and Sasuke felt its effects, with the Uchiha succumbing to graphic illusions of various forms of both his and Sakura's gruesome deaths, causing the poor raven-haired boy to puke. Meanwhile, Sakura was faring a little better, having been exposed to similar levels of killer intent while training with Anko, Yugao and Naruto. Still, the pinkett was breaking out in a cold sweat from the killer intent the kunoichi was leaking out. This killer intent, it's not natural for a genin-level shinobi. The Pinkett observed, feeling even more unnerved by this unknown opponent. Clenching her fist as she began to emit her own killer intent to counter Kusa Kunoichi's own. Feeling Sakura's own killer intent, the foreign Kunoichi grinned madly with the sense of exhilaration at the prospect of battling against an actual competent genin. Her hand twitching ever so slightly before it shot out twice, launching 2 kunai in rapid succession, causing Sakura's eyes to widen in surprise, realizing that the Kunoichi was not aiming for her, but rather her still-prone teammate. Shit! Sakura cursed. She sprinted forth, tapping into her Hanyu attributes for the added boost in speed to increase her chances of reaching Sasuke before the kunai could. Thok! One of the kunai embedded itself deeply within a tree trunk, causing the Kusa Kunoichi to frown. Seeing her attack missed her designated target. Hey, interesting. I had expected the Uchiha to be the one to give me a challenge, but that girl, she is something else. The Kunoichi grinned. Perhaps after I deal with the Uchiha, I should extend an offer to her to join me. She would make an interesting addition to my forces. Elsewhere, with Naruto. Damn, where the hell did that gust of wind come from? The blonde grunted in annoyance as he picked himself up off the ground. No way, that was natural. It had to have been a jutsu of some kind. Ari pointed out. Yeah, the question is, who performed it? Naruto mentally questioned with narrowed eyes, as it was clear that it was no low-level jutsu a genin would use. Granted, there were a select few individuals with extenuating circumstances like Sakura, Hinata, Gaara, and himself. But this felt odd. As if the person that performed the jutsu had been masking their chakra. Suppose I should get back with my team. The blonde Hanyu stated as he turned towards the direction he felt Sakura was in. Frowning slightly, as she felt her emotions through his mark. Feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. However, before he could move on, a scream pierced through the trees, catching Naruto's attention. Damn! Naruto cursed his luck, taking one last look at the direction he felt Sakura in before jumping off in the direction he heard the scream coming from. Sakura-chan may be in a fight, but she isn't in danger. And my conscience won't allow me to turn my back on someone in need. After bounding through the trees at a fast pace for a half a minute, the blonde Hanyu came across the origin of the scream. A red-haired kunoichi with glasses was pinned to the ground by a massive bear-like beast that was now poised to strike her with its massive paw. Not wasting any time, Naruto dropped into the shadow below him, only to re-emerge to the right of the large bear. Bringing his leg back, he brought it forth with a considerable amount of force to send the large beast flying back. Landing beside the downed kunoichi, Naruto kept his eyes on the massive beast. Knowing full well that it wasn't dead yet. Are you all right? He asked the redhead, peering over his shoulder at her. Why yes, she stammered as she gazed up at the blonde. However, before the two could say anything more, a loud roar caught the blonde's attention. Turning, he saw the massive beast was up once more and charging towards him. Smirking, Naruto turned towards the charging beast and readied himself. Just as the bear got within range, Naruto brought his fist back before unleashed a mighty right hook to the bear's jaw. A resounding crack echoing off the trees, causing the beast to howl out in pain as it shook its head to try and get rid of the pain, before it turned and ran into the forest. Hope I didn't hurt you too badly, big guy. Naruto thought to himself, having met with that particular bear a number of times while he trained within this very forest. Which was the main reason the blonde had only aimed to ward off the big guy, instead of outright kill him. That was incredible. The red-haired girl exclaimed with stars in her eyes as she gazed up at her blonde savior, getting up from where she had been pinned down previously. Thanks. Naruto replied. Sorry about Brutus there, he is usually a bit more docile. But I guess with the exams going on, he isn't too happy with all the strangers running around his home. You named that thing. Course, the blonde shrugged. Sometimes I will come out here and wrestle with him. This of course earned an incredulous look from the redhead. Anyways, name's Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, otherwise known as Konoha's Shadow Fox. The blonde introduced himself. Did you say you're an Uzumaki? The girl stuttered in shock, a look of disbelief washing over her face as well as a hint of apprehension. As in, an actual Uzumaki. Yes, my mother was Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto answered, a little confused as to why his clan name was such an interest to the girl before him. Though before he could ponder it further, the redhead had leapt up and wrapped her arms around him and began to sob into his chest. Not really knowing how to react, Naruto did what came natural, and wrapped the girl in a comforting hug. Hoping that when she calmed down, he would get some answers. The two of them stood like this for a handful of moments, before the girl had finally calmed down enough to take a step back and reflect upon her recent actions, prompting her to blush slightly. Better now? Naruto inquired, earning a nod from the girl. Sorry about that. She sighed, a little embarrassed. You're probably wondering why I am so excited to see another Uzumaki, right? Another Uzumaki? The blonde mentally questioned, beginning to put the pieces together. Something like that. Naruto chuckled. Though, I am going to assume you are also an Uzumaki. Yes. My name is Karen Uzumaki. The girl introduced herself with a slight bow. A pleasure to meet you, Karen-chan. The blonde smiled as he took her hand and lightly kissed her knuckles in a gentleman-like fashion, earning another blush from the girl. If I may, what happened to your team? We were caught in an ambush by another team. Karen frowned. I tried to warn them, but they just told me to shut up and ignored me. After that, the ambush happened and I ran. The other team almost got me, but then the bear attacked and well, I think you know how that ended. I see. The boy frowned. Sorry about your team. I'm not. The girl scoffed, crossing her arms over her chest. Always making inappropriate remarks about me, and when I had to heal them, they would always bite me in personal areas. Bite you? Yes. Karen sighed. I can heal others with my chakra, however to do so, they must be able to bite me so that I can directly transfer my chakra to them. And those bastards would use any excuse to do it. I suppose it is best that they get taken care of then. Naruto stated, clearly not liking the fact that this girl's teammates would treat her in such a fashion. But what will you do now? I don't know. Karen answered. With my team dead, I am now officially disqualified from the exams, but I don't want to return to my home village. Why not? Because that bastard of a village leader condemned my mother to death by overusing her healing abilities, and he already said once I return, regardless of whether I pass or fail, I would be used for breeding to carry on my bloodline. She spat in disgust, earning a scowl from the blonde. They don't, was all Naruto said. Don't go back to your village. Stay here with your family. But that bastard just won't let me go, not without a fight. Karen pointed out. Not if he thinks you're dead. The blonde grinned, forming an idea in his head. Seeing the confused look on his newly found clanmate, he decided to elaborate. We make a blood clone of you, and well, kill it. That body is returned to your village, along with your teammates, and you get to start a new life here. Hearing the blonde's plan, Karen couldn't help but look at him in shock, but above all, in admiration. Not only had this young man before her saved her from the bear that had attacked her, but now he was also saving her from a life of misery and pain. Tears forming in her eyes, she latched onto him and cried in joy, all while muttering her thanks into his chest. Another handful of minutes had passed between the two, before Karen had regained her composure, though still sporting a severe blush at the memory of being within the blonde's arms, as he had comforted her. Naruto on the other hand, proceeded to summon his dark clone, much to Karen's surprise to see this rather unique jutsu. Even more so, when she felt that the boy had not used any chakra to initiate it. This is my dark clone, I'll explain later. Naruto said, seeing the look of interest on the redhead's face. He will take you to my compound, so you can lay low. He will also explain to the other girls there what is going on. Wait. Karen looked at the blonde in confusion. Other girls. You'll see. He grinned before he gave the signal to his dark clone to get her to safety. Wait, take this. The redhead started as she produced her team's scroll and tossed it to the blonde. Ironically enough, she happened to be the one his team needed to pass this exam. Since I am supposed to be dead, I guess I don't need it. Thanks, Naruto said, stuffing the scroll of earth he had just received into one of his storage seals to keep it safe. I will stop by as soon as I can to see how you are doing, but first, I need to check on my own team. Giving a nod, Karen approached the dark clone and allowed it to take her into the shadows, much to her shock. Her destination, the Uzumaki clan compound. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention how she would be traveling. The blonde Hanyu chuckled slightly, as he could only imagine how the girl would be reacting to her first trip through the shadow world. Anyways, I need to get back to Sakura-chan and make sure both her and the team are alright. Turning once more in the direction of his pink-haired mate, the blonde shot through the trees once more with an inhuman speed. So friends, this was episode 13 of this epic and emotional story. If you enjoyed it and want the next episode soon, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also comment down your thoughts. Do you think Naruto's half-demon powers will save the Shinobi world, or will they become the greatest threat it has ever faced? I'll see you in the next episode.